Outside the palace, a conversation shifts toward a new topic. The white-haired emperor brings up the subject of marriage, seeking an opinion. Standing before the throne, the 9-year-old girl confirms her age to the emperor and the duke. The emperor suggests that marrying into a protective family early is her best option.
A detailed view of the young girl's floral dress-up.
Introducing herself as Isabella Schweitzer, the blonde girl expresses deep gratitude for the sovereign's kindness. The emperor accepts her thanks as Isabella bows politely. He declares his intent to make her a lady of the Rosamond Duchy.
The emperor describes the Rosamond family's prestige, calling the match a dream for a baron's daughter.
Clutching her skirts, Isabella skeptically questions if she would truly be safe with them. A haunting realization strikes her that the Rosamond family killed her in her previous life.
Fear washes over the blonde girl as dark memories resurface.
She reflects on the cliched but true fact that she has lived this life once before.
In her past life, she was an adult duchess trapped in an arranged marriage. She recalls being tormented and abused by her husband's family until she reached adulthood. Her captors forced her to sign away her inheritance through a coerced will. After securing her wealth, the family ended her life with poison.
Shocked and sweating, Isabella realizes she has been sent back to when she was 9 years old.
She resolves to find any way possible to avoid the murderous Rosamond family. Watching the emperor, she secretly criticizes his foolish plan to repeat history. The emperor claims he is taking care of her because her parents died in the void. A dark expanse known as the void emits a lethal black mist that threatens the empire. A hooded warlock harnesses the dangerous purple energy for personal power. Isabella's parents once knelt before the emperor to accept their exploration mission. A memory shows her smiling parents being swallowed by the mysterious black mist. She views the emperor's overbearing focus on her marriage as a burden. She understands that the emperor needs her parents' legacy to continue the exploration of the void.
Isabella decides she must resolve this immediate threat to her future.
She prepares to take a bold stand to stop the messenger from going to the Rosamonds. Interrupting the emperor, the girl offers a sudden and sincere apology. The black-haired man, Kellerhan Barumit, watches the scene with a cold, silent expression.
Isabella bows deeply, hoping her interjection will derail the emperor's plan.
The emperor expresses disappointment, insisting the Duke of Rosamond is her perfect match. Frustrated by his stubbornness, Isabella fears he won't care about her safety after she weds. She claims to have admired a different family for a long time, prompting the emperor to offer his help. Anxiety and determination mix as Isabella prepares to reveal her choice. A close-up captures the stern profile of the high-ranking noble. This man is identified as Kellerhan Barumit, a figure of significant power and intensity. A shield and sword represent the authority and might of the imperial knights. Dark figures move through the mist, representing the elite knights of Gottfried. Known as the imperial family's mad dog, Kellerhan stands over a bloody battlefield. Rumors of his cruelty and trophies taken from criminals precede his fearsome reputation. Isabella views Kellerhan as her only hope and is invited to rise by the emperor. The emperor suggests to the duke that Isabella could be paired with his own son. Kellerhan considers the proposal with a pensive, dark gaze. Excited by the duke's potential interest, the emperor encourages him to ask Isabella directly. The imposing duke begins to walk toward the startled young girl. A terrifying purple aura surrounds the duke as he looms over the blonde child. Kellerhan stares into her eyes, wondering if she is truly unaware of his reputation. He bluntly demands to know exactly what she admires about his dangerous family. Isabella looks on with a worried and uncertain expression. Kellerhan claims his only experience is holding a sword to someone's throat. Kellerhan asks what specifically she admires about the Barumut family. Isabella enthusiastically agrees with his intense statement. Isabella smiles brightly and declares she wants to join the Barumuts to punish criminals. The emperor claps with joy while his attendants panic in the background. Kellerhan remains silent, known for being a man obsessed with his principles. Isabella tightly clutches Kellerhan's cloak, feeling that her current progress is not enough. Kellerhan stares down with a pensive and intense gaze from his red eyes. Isabella looks up with wide, pleading eyes and calls him her father-in-law. She resolves to do anything necessary to become the daughter-in-law of the mad dog. A stylish blonde man chats comfortably on his phone. The ornate carriage speeds quickly along the sun-drenched, tree-lined road. A sudden clatter rings as the carriage jolts, startling the young girl. Kellerhan sits in stoic silence with his arms crossed and eyes closed. Kellerhan tells the emperor that marriage is too important to proceed without the consent of those involved. The emperor insists he must protect her family's daughter to ensure future explorers venture into the void. Kellerhan reluctantly agrees to give the girl a trial period of 1 month. Kellerhan states he will accept her if she endures the month, while Isabella secretly agrees. Kellerhan warns that if she fails, the emperor must personally ensure she never approaches his family again. Kellerhan casts a sharp, menacing glance toward the young girl. Callahan threatens immediate execution if she ever dares to leak any of the Barumut family secrets.
The Emperor tries to comfort her by offering the Rosamund family as a backup option.
Isabella cries out in absolute protest, hating the idea of the Rosamunds even more. Isabella is relieved to have successfully avoided the murderous Rosamund family for now. A soft spark sounds as Isabella suddenly feels a strange sensation. The Emperor looks on in shock as Isabella suddenly collapses.
Isabella sits on the floor and apologizes, claiming her legs suddenly gave out. The Emperor tells her to rise, but warns her to do so slowly. Isabella gasps in surprise as she is suddenly lifted off the ground.
Callahan effortlessly picks up the small girl with a single hand. Callahan asks how she expects to last a month as Isabella finds her situation deeply confusing.
Isabella quickly confirms her readiness to move forward with the plan.
Callahan asks if she has ever met his son, to which she admits she has not. Callahan begins to explain the reason for their lack of acquaintance. Isabella reflects privately that the concept of marriage does not actually matter to her. She only cares about securing her parents' inheritance and gaining the strength to protect herself. Isabella clenches her dress as her thoughts turn toward the young Yuta Buruma. She recalls that the boy has a destined lover who is meant to appear in the future. Isabella smiles, planning to eventually divorce him once her own goals are met. She resolves to stay focused until she can call off the engagement at 18.
Callahan looks out with a bored expression as the carriage continues its journey.
Callahan abruptly changes his mind and decides to stop talking.
Isabella looks out the window in wide-eyed amazement at her new surroundings.
The carriage arrives at the massive and grand Barumut family residence.
A gray-haired butler warmly welcomes the Duke back from his travels. Callahan asks for a report while handing over his cloak to the waiting butler. Callahan dismisses the court's persistent petitions for pardons as Isabella watches him closely.
Isabella realizes Callahan is a mad dog who never lets go once he sinks his teeth in.
Callahan informs the butler he is heading to his study as Isabella watches him walk away. Harold glances away nervously while sweating. Isabella looks down with a saddened expression. Callahan stares ahead and asks what happens now. Harold nervously asks for the young lady's identity. The black-haired man offers a simple acknowledgement.
A sharp crack sounds as Harold's monocle shatters when Callahan identifies Isabella as his prospective daughter-in-law.
Harold shouts in total shock while Callahan dismissively explains she is only a prospective for now and tells the butler to help her settle in while he rests. Isabella bows as Harold panics internally, wondering how the Duke can treat a future daughter-in-law like a casually found stray.
Introducing himself as the head butler Harold, the man greets Isabella while she silently resolves to be careful around him.
Isabella realizes she must tread carefully to ensure her future as Harold offers to explain the manor's layout. A narration box explains that the Schweitzer family lacked political power and were seen as insignificant by other nobles.
Isabella remembers being scorned by servants in her past life and fears a repeat with her new family.
She worries the Barumets will treat her just as poorly. Isabella resolves to endure everything until she reaches adulthood.
A loud slap rings out as Isabella strikes her cheeks to stop herself from trembling. A groan of pain escapes as Isabella clutches her face, prompting Harold to panic while Magda arrives to investigate the commotion.
Harold frantically blames the Duke for the situation while Magda calmly accepts the explanation.
Magda gently takes the young girl fans. Magda introduces herself and expresses her honor in meeting Isabella.
Smiling warmly, Magda identifies herself as the head maid who will be tending to the girl from now on. Magda offers Isabella a choice between a bath or a meal.
Isabella is stunned that such a kind person will be her caretaker.
Magda invites Isabella to speak comfortably, though the girl remains skeptical of her friendliness.
Isabella formally introduces herself as a daughter of the Schweitzer family.
Isabella explains that the Duke brought her under the Emperor's orders, leaving the servants stunned.
Magda gazes at her with a gentle silence. Callahan sits in his study, lost in thought.
A quick tap sounds as Callahan considers the uncertainty of Isabella's stay.
Isabella reacts with wide-eyed surprise. Magda comforts Isabella, promising to serve her well regardless of the future, and telling her that children shouldn't worry about such things.
Isabella remembers the warmth of her late parents. Isabella hugs Magda and decides that she likes the kind people of the Barumet household.
An unknown voice tells Isabella to stop crying because her face is a mess. A young boy with black hair and purple eyes peeks into the room. A stylish blonde man chats comfortably on his phone.
Magda asks Isabella if she enjoyed her meal.
Isabella smiles broadly and confirms she did.
Isabella is overwhelmed with joy by the amazing meal.
Magda suggests that Isabella should begin speaking casually with the staff. Isabella clarifies the request while she continues to eat.
Isabella pumps her fists and agrees to try fixing her speech. Isabella panics because she is too sleepy to follow Callahan's order to visit his study. The maids gush over Isabella's cuteness, comparing her to the Duke's own child. Rubbing her eyes, Isabella realizes they are talking about young Yuta. Magda looks on with a pleasant smile.
The scene shifts to a vast, snowy forest. A menacing growl rumbles as a massive black wolf looms over a terrified Isabella. Isabella trembles before the snarling beast, questioning if it is even a dog.
The wolf's enormous paw steps forward into the cell.
The wolf lunges forward with its jaws wide open.
Isabella squeezes her eyes shut in terror, dreading a painful bite.
She cautiously opens one eye to see if she is still in danger. A small black animal playfully leaps over the girl's skirt as she scurries away across the snow. Her attention is taken by a sudden, sharp bark as she realizes the beast is just a tiny puppy. The puppy perches on her head to bark defiantly at a massive black wolf's jaws. A giant black wolf with glowing red eyes stares down with a chillingly calm expression. A soft, comforting sound follows as the girl gently pets the puppy's head. The scene shifts as the girl wakes up in her new room with a blissful smile. A black-haired boy with a deep blush watches her with quiet concern. Confused, the girl reaches out to touch the boy's hair, marveling at how fluffy it feels. The boy ducks his head in embarrassment and offers a sheepish apology. He asks if he startled her awake, leaving the girl completely bewildered by his gentleness. Bolting upright in bed, the girl loudly demands to know the intruder's identity. The boy identifies himself as Yuta Barumit and reveals he is only 9 years old. Isabella notes that the legendary Mad Dog son appears surprisingly harmless for now. She recalls that his personality will eventually darken once he falls ill and meets his future lover. Isabella resolves to use this peaceful time to secure her future against the Rosamond family. She offers a formal greeting to the young heir, treating him like the future duke. Yuta asks her to stop being so formal and speak naturally with him.
He emphasizes the importance of proper etiquette while appearing quite flustered.
Yuta asks if she is truly there to be his fiancée, as the maids claimed. He suddenly reaches out and takes both of her hands into his own. Blushing intensely, the boy asks if she finds his presence frightening. Isabella is internally screaming with joy at the boy's unexpected cuteness. She laughs and assures him that he is only scary in the distant future. Yuta declares that a bride is a precious person he must protect with his life. He suddenly realizes he never learned her name despite his grand declaration. Isabella sweats, realizing she completely forgot to introduce herself in her excitement. The boy softly repeats her name as he gazes at her with wide purple eyes.
Yuta whispers into her ear, seeking confirmation on his understanding of marriage.
Isabella reflects that the boy clearly has no real idea what marriage entails. She lets out a bright, cheerful laugh at the boy's adorable innocence. The two children make a solemn pinky promise to honor their future engagement. A heavy, sudden sound follows as the door swings open to reveal a dark presence. Kellerhan appears in the doorway, reminding the girl that he summoned her to his study earlier. The Duke looms over them, and Isabella struggles to find an excuse for her absence.
Yuta bravely shields the girl and forbids his father from scolding his fiancée.
Kellerhan coldly points out that she has not earned that official title quite yet. The Duke shuts down his son's protest with a sharp final command to stay quiet.
He orders Yuta to leave the room immediately, and the boy submissively complies.
Yuta casts a worried look back at Isabella as he is forced to the pert. A quick tap sounds as Kellerhan decides it is finally time for their private conversation.
Isabella clutches her chest, feeling the suffocating pressure of the mad dog's gaze.
Kellerhan takes a seat and mockingly suggests she can listen while lying down. Sensing a dangerous trap, Isabella politely declines, while Kellerhan wears a chilling smile. The Duke addresses her by her full name, Isabella Schweitzer, with icy precision. He bluntly tells her to give up her pursuit of the Baramuts and go to the Rosamunds. Isabella protests that she must stay, but Kellerhan dismisses her determination as a delusion. He warns her that this household is no place for a pampered noble daughter. Kellerhan describes a world of beheadings and blood, questioning if a child could stay sane there. Kellerhan's voice booms with a harsh dismissal. Isabella defiantly claims she will grow up fine alone and promises to be helpful without causing trouble. Kellerhan stands in stony silence while a soft swish sounds as he adjusts his posture. A voice questions why she is so fixated on the Barumit family. Kellerhan turns his back, lost in cold, silent contemplation.
Isabella reacts with a start of sudden, wide-eyed shock.
Kellerhan observes her extreme desperation while a soft rustle sounds as she clutches her skirt.
Isabella declares her simple will to live, leaving Kellerhan to ask for clarification in surprise.
Determination flares in Isabella's eyes as a sharp wind sounds through the room. Rhythmic taps echo in the hall as the two stand in a tense silence. Kellerhan lets out a weary sigh and rubs his head in frustration. Expressing his disdain for children, Kellerhan walks away as Isabella watches him with an unreadable gaze.
Isabella lets out a stubborn scoff as she turns away from the retreating Duke.
Harold notes the Duke brought a daughter-in-law home by choice, but Kellerhan blames the Emperor's command. The butler remains skeptical, pointing out that the Duke never follows orders he finds distasteful. A gentle chuckle escapes Harold as he offers a knowing smile.
Kellerhan calls for Harold while the ice in his glass makes a sharp rhythmic clink. Kellerhan questions the girl's ability to survive in their home, and Harold admits it is a daunting task. A dry laugh sounds as the ice in the drink clinks once more. Kellerhan stares deeply into his glass with a serious and pensive expression. Morning birds chirp over the manor as a maid asks how Isabella can eat so heartily. Isabella enjoys her meal with a look of pure, blissful satisfaction. The maids gush over the young lady's adorable appearance as she continues to eat. The staff express how seeing Isabella enjoy her food brings warmth to their usually expressionless household. Magda happily notes the empty plates as Isabella politely thanks them for the delicious breakfast. Offering a bright and cheerful smile, Isabella beams at the staff after finishing her meal. Isabella hopes for the Duke's favor when a sudden loud bang startles her mid-dot. Isabella breaks into a nervous sweat, realizing her thoughts have summoned the Duke himself. Isabella mentally scolds the Duke's entrance while asking about his presence, and he asks if she is finished eating. Kellerhan inquires about her outdoor clothing, and Magda confirms the girl brought her own attire along. Isabella is horrified when the Duke demands she be ready in 10 minutes, mentally critiquing his lack of experience with daughters. Magda's efficiency ensures Isabella is ready on time, and the girl fondly remembers her mother's love for the yellow dress. Isabella's blue eyes widen in realization. Kellerhan stands ready for their departure, looking imposing in a regal black cloak. Isabella gazes at the Duke and reflects on his resemblance to a grim reaper in his dark attire. The Duke announces it is time to depart, and Isabella responds with a cheerful affirmation. Ominous black crows let out piercing caws. As they head toward the carriage, Kellerhan tells her to follow while she notes the ominous presence of the birds. The coachman greets the Duke with nervous respect as the pair arrives at the carriage. Kellerhan bluntly states his intention to see Batali Dadna, leaving Isabella in a state of shock. Isabella panics internally, recognizing the name of a notorious serial arsonist. An image of a winged figure illustrates the infamy of the prison holding notorious criminals. The scene shifts to the imposing gates of Rudger Manor, the destination for the Empire's worst offenders. Kellerhan notes her calm and asks if she knows of this place, and she explains her father described it as a house for bad people. The Duke explains that the Bermud family does far more than just imprisoning criminals in cells. Kellerhan clarifies that they ensure proper punishment and monitor criminals to prevent any future chaos. A chilling intensity fills Kellerhan's gaze. Isabella wonders about the purpose of his questions and whether they relate specifically to the arsonist. She recalls the horrific crimes of Batali Dadna, who destroyed villages and claimed countless innocent lives. Kellerhan asserts that horrific crimes require punishment, while Isabella resolves to watch him carefully and feign ignorance for now. Kellerhan tells her to reflect on the situation again, and she agrees to comply. A black-gloved hand suddenly reaches out to halt the girl's progress. Isabella notes he could have simply told her to stay back instead of stopping her so abruptly. A heavy, rhythmic tap sounds as the Duke approaches a prisoner sitting in a dark cell. Kellerhan greets the man and mentions his recent lobbying efforts as the girl watches from afar. The prisoner wonders how the Duke managed to uncover his secret connections. Sensing a chilling aura, Isabella watches the encounter with growing apprehension. Kellerhan sits calmly and notes that his arrival proves the man's efforts weren't entirely in vain. The prisoner remarks that the mad dog of the Empire wouldn't come all this way just to help him. A metallic clink sounds from the prisoner's chains as he asks if the Duke has other motives. The prisoner's scarred face is revealed beneath his hood as he glares out from the darkness. Chains rattle once more while the man demands to know the Duke's true intentions. The hooded man remains silent, his single eye fixed on his visitor. A soft swish sounds as Kellerhan notes that isolation has made the man unusually talkative. Kellerhan bluntly reveals that the execution is scheduled for next week, eliciting a shocked gasp. The Duke coldly adds that no one will attend the execution, leaving Isabella to question who the true villain is. Isabella gazes at the Duke's back, feeling a sudden shiver of dread. A desperate, trembling sound follows as the man grips the bars and calls out his daughter's name. Batali begs for news of his daughter Rena, but the Duke meets his plea with stony silence. Kellerhan dismisses the request, stating he has no reason to speak with a criminal. A loud, sharp bang sounds as the man slams against the bars, frantically denying his guilt. The man claims he acted only to save his daughter, but Kellerhan questions if that changes his deeds. Fury flares in the prisoner's eyes as he shouts about the necessity of his actions. He recalls the villagers sacrificing children to a sorcerer and maintains he only wanted to save Rena. Despair fills the cell as the man begs for any word of his child, but he receives a final refusal. A wet splash sounds as Batali spits at the Duke, who simply closes his eyes in response. The memory of the villagers' cruelty toward a father and daughter lingers in the air. Tears stream down the man's face as he weeps for his lost child behind the bars. He belows insults, calling the Duke a heartless hound who hunts the powerless for his own version of justice. An ominous curse against the Barumut family echoes through the blood-spattered darkness. Rhythmic footsteps echo as the pair walks away through a sun-drenched corridor.
Callaghan turns and asks the girl if she truly understood the scene she just witnessed.
He explains that being a Barumut means becoming the permanent target of the world's hatred.
The Duke asks if she still possesses the resolve to join such a cursed family.
Isabella realizes that this entire visit was designed as a brutal test of her character. A massive black wolf with glowing red eyes stands as a symbol of the family's terrifying legacy. Isabella stops and asks for one more clarification before they leave the grounds. She asks the Duke for the current location of the arsonist's daughter.
Callaghan reflects on his earlier lie to the prisoner as he recalls the man's broken plea.
Isabella asserts her certainty that the Duke is hiding the girl somewhere safe. She recalls rumors that the Duke has been concealing the child's whereabouts for years.
A memory surfaces of nobles complaining about how the Duke's secrets are fueling public resentment.
Cruel whispers from the past suggest that the criminal's daughter should have been executed as well.
Isabella asks for a final confirmation, and Callaghan admits he saved the child. The girl's confusion deepens as she struggles to reconcile his cruel mask with his merciful actions. She wonders why a man known for his coldness would protect the offspring of a mass murderer. A memory of a formal confrontation asks why the Duke chose to hide the girl in a monastery.
Callaghan reveals his core belief that the girl was saved simply because she committed no sin.
A soft, warm glow surrounds Isabella as she feels a sense of quiet admiration for the Duke.
Isabella's skirt swishes as she steps forward, reaffirming her vow to become a member of the Barumut family. Isabella reflects on her refusal to live a shallow life dictated by social expectations. A large, mustached silhouette manipulates a small puppet of the girl as if she were a toy.
Callaghan remains silent with a pensive and stoic expression.
The girl stands firm, looking up with a mixture of challenge and hope.
A soft breath sounds as she stares back in anticipation.
The girl is flustered and confused about being called a mad bod.
A series of dry chuckles escape the Duke as he covers his face, finding the girl's behavior entirely unpredictable.
A sharp click sounds as the girl expresses her shock at his laughter, while he tells her to stop pointing and end the chit-chat.
A gentle swish sounds as the Duke reaches out a gloved hand and invites her to finally go home. A quiet daze settles over the girl as she processes the Duke's invitation to return to the manor.
Narration notes the child's peculiar nature as the Duke leads her away by the hand.
A soft whistle sounds over the manor as the staff welcomes the Duke back and asks where he went without notice.
A sudden, sharp gasp of shock escapes the head maid and butler as they witness the scene.
A loud churn sounds from the girl's stomach as the Duke orders a meal, leaving the staff marveling at her ability to move the impenetrable man.
The girl watches the surroundings with a quiet sense of curiosity. A series of quick taps sound as Yuta rushes down the stairs and the staff asks where the boy has been.
A soft rustle sounds as Callaghan tells the girl to get down, while Yuta watches in confusion, wondering where they were.
The staff lets out a loud, shocked cry upon hearing the Duke matter-of-factly state they visited the high-security prison. Callaghan stares intensely, asserting that everyone should have expected her to become a member of the Barumut family. A soft exclamation sounds as the staff struggles to process the gravity of the Duke's decision.
A firm declaration echoes as the Duke confirms he has chosen to take the girl as his daughter-in-law.
A joyful cheer sounds as Yuta celebrates the news while the older staff members cry out in disbelief at the suddenness.
The girl looks on with a startled expression as her full name is spoken.
A soft rustle sounds as the Duke stoops down and promises the girl that from this moment on, she belongs with the Barumut family and no one can threaten her. Callaghan watches the girl with a serious and protective gaze. The Duke asks the girl if something is wrong or if she is feeling unwell. Blushing deeply, the girl assures him she is fine and thinks about how the moment has finally arrived. With tears of happiness in her eyes, the girl beams and expresses her gratitude to her new father-in-law. A heavy rain sounds with a steady downpour as a voice in another manor shouts about nonsense. A furious thud sounds as a man stomps his foot in rage over the news of the engagement between the Duke's son and the girl.
A loud bang sounds as the mustached nobleman slams his desk in a fury while his aide tries to calm him down.
A sharp roar sounds as the nobleman scolds a purple-haired boy for being relaxed, warning him that he has no idea what power the girl possesses. The nobleman looks at the news of the engagement and hopes to intervene before it is formalized, blaming the emperor for the arrangement. Standing in a room with overturned furniture, the nobleman curses both the emperor and the Barumut family.
A sharp crackle of energy sounds as the nobleman orders his man to go to the Barumut estate and bring the girl back by any means necessary. A chilling hum sounds as the nobleman's eyes glow green, declaring his obsession with obtaining the girl for the glory of his empire.
The scene shifts to a peaceful garden where the two children enjoy a quiet afternoon picnic. A series of tired huffs sound as the girl thinks about how the staff arranged a picnic despite their busy schedule and thanks Magda internally.
A soft munching sound follows as Yuta eats a cookie with a thoughtful expression.
The girl begins to ask a question as the two sit surrounded by snacks. A quiet thud sounds as a partially eaten cookie falls onto the picnic blanket. A heavy thud sounds as Yuta panics and asks if the girl is tired of him or if he ate too many cookies, while she tries to calm him down. Images of a sword and books appear as the girl mentions Magda's comments about the boy's grueling training and heavy responsibilities.
The boy is shown alone at a large desk, diligently working on his studies. Isabella watches the boy with a kind and supportive smile.
A rhythmic tapping sounds as the girl nods repeatedly, and the boy asks for confirmation of her words. A bright spark of inspiration appears as the boy suddenly has an idea. Holding the girl's hands, the boy excitedly suggests that she should join him in his lessons. A soft rustle sounds as a staff member watches from behind a tree while the boy argues that she wouldn't be bored if they studied together. The boy looks at her with an earnest and hopeful gaze. A sudden sharp crack sounds as a heavy boot crushes a fallen branch. Yuta demands to know who is there as a gray-haired man peeks from behind a tree, startling the children. The boy threatens the intruder while the visitor apologizes, explaining his presence has clearly rattled them. A sharp click sounds as the stranger identifies himself as a messenger sent by Duke Rosamund to meet the Duke. The gray-haired man explains he wandered into the beautiful garden because the master was away, catching Isabella off guard. A memory surfaces of a man in a vest being introduced as the person in charge of education, greeting the children. The man introduces himself as Rodolphe, and Isabella recognizes him as the right-hand man of the villainous Herbert. Isabella is struck with a sudden, anxious gasp as she internally warns Yuta to stay on guard against the newcomer. Rodolphe politely announces that Lady Isabella is being officially invited to the Rosamund estate. Yuta asks why she is being summoned, while the messenger begins to offer a calculated explanation. The man claims Duke Herbert is deeply worried about her safety, but Isabella's expression remains cold and unconvinced. Isabella recalls that the support Herbert gave her parents was purely a tool for his own selfish ambitions. Rodolphe tries to persuade the girl to follow him by offering future counsel and encouragement for her hardships. A soft swish sounds as the boy turns back, silently reading the distress written across the girl's face. The girl remains frozen and silent as the weight of the suspicious invitation settles over the garden. A vision of her newfound family at the Barmouth Manor offers a stark contrast to the visitor's demands. Rodolphe insists there is no other way, and Isabella fears she might have to comply with the order. The boy's mouth tenses as he prepares to defy the messenger's request. A firm thud sounds as Yuta steps forward, physically shielding Isabella from the intruder's reach. Rodolphe claims she will be in good hands, unaware that his every move is being watched with protective intensity. A sharp twitch of annoyance crosses Rodolphe's face as he internally insults the protective boy. The boy stares back with a defiant glare, unwilling to let the man take another step toward her. Surrounded by a floral aura, Yuta boldly declares that Isabella is his bride and belongs with him. Rodolphe's temper flares as he loses his composure, deciding to take the girl by force while insulting the Barmouth family. A sharp bang sounds as Rodolphe grabs her arm, prompting her to scream for release as a massive silhouette approaches. Tears well in the girl's eyes as she begs not to be taken back to the house that caused her pain. Rhythmic footsteps echo as Kellerhan arrives in a cloud of dark energy, questioning why the man is touching his family. A sudden, sharp gasp of terror escapes Rodolphe as he realizes the Duke has returned unexpectedly soon. Kellerhan places a comforting hand on the girl's head, noting that the intruder waited for his absence to strike. A soft rustle sounds as the boy clenches his fists, finally seeing his father standing as their protector. A metallic swish sounds as the Duke grips his hilt, calling the intruder a rat for trying to kidnap his daughter-in-law. A sharp bang sounds as Kellerhan draws his blade, pinning it to the man's throat as the intruder screams for mercy. Kellerhan looms over the terrified messenger with a gaze as cold and sharp as his steel blade. The messenger stares down the length of the sword, realizing that the Duke is truly prepared to end his life. Terror grips Rodolphe as he realizes the Barmouth Duke is completely unfazed by the Rosamund family's power. The intruder frantically backpedals, stammering that he was only following orders to bring the girl back. A sharp slice sounds through the air as Kellerhan moves closer, mockingly noting the man's slow reactions. Rodolphe warns of future consequences, but Kellerhan coldly asserts that he has no concern for the opinions of others. A loud, comical zoom sounds as Rodolphe flees the garden, shouting about his master's high regard for the lady. A soft sigh of relief follows as Isabella realizes she is safe, while Yuta checks on her well-being. The girl's eyes widen as she watches her protector, feeling a mix of awe and lingering fear. Kellerhan reflects on why the Rosamund family would go to such lengths to secure the girl's return. Narration explains that Herbert was always making relentless demands of the girl's parents in the past. A memory reveals Herbert demanding the location of the Crown of Rod group while the parents stand their ground. A sharp roar sounds as the mustached man scolds them for hiding the truth after he funded their research. The father counters that money does not buy the right to claim the fruits of their labor. A loud, sharp bang sounds as Herbert demands silence, unable to contain his growing frustration and rage. Herbert insists he is the only one worthy of the research and reminds them of his vital financial support. Kellerhan realizes the significance of the item Herbert is searching for and why he is so desperate to act. A soft rustle sounds as the Duke sits with the children, mentioning the central bank while admitting it ruins the picnic mood. The black-haired man reflects that as long as the item remains in the central bank, it is secure. Kellerhan instructs the children to return to the estate for a significant announcement. A portrait of a woman is startled by a sudden, shocked exclamation of disbelief. Magda is stunned to learn that the engagement date has been moved up. Kellerhan's staff is overwhelmed by the impossible task of preparing the ceremony in 1 week. Magda insists on a proper ceremony, leading the Duke to promise he won't rush the quality. Isabella looks on in confusion as the Duke orders the children to prepare for departure. The Duke reveals they are traveling to the estate of the Marquis of Bingley. Narration describes the Marquis as a wealthy, neutral powerhouse in the Empire's commerce. Isabella worries the Marquis might be a temperamental man, even more difficult than Herbert. Bruno Binkler, the Marquis's eldest son, is introduced as a handsome, long-haired noble. Bruno welcomes the group while the Duke apologizes for his unexpected arrival. The Duke and the young host exchange polite greetings in the sunlit hall. Isabella is relieved and impressed by Bruno's kind and handsome appearance. Bruno's expression turns pensive as he considers the impact of Herbert's actions. The blond man leans down to formally introduce himself to the two children. Bruno identifies himself as the eldest son of the influential Binkler family. Bruno's teasing about the engagement prompts Yuta to act as a protective shield for Isabella. The Duke requests a meeting with the Marquis to discuss official business. Bruno happily agrees to lead the guests to his father's study. A light-haired man rushes into the room while shouting a dramatic greeting. The Marquis tearfully berates the Duke for not giving them time to throw a party. Kellerhan expresses his disdain for large celebrations while the Marquis remains persistent. Yuta explains the Duke once saved Bruno's life, explaining the Binklers' intense loyalty. The Marquis clings to the Duke, refusing to let him leave without accepting their thanks. Isabella begins to suspect that the purpose of their visit is related to her upcoming engagement. A sudden, sharp ahem sounds as the children interrupt the Marquis's dramatic outburst. The Marquis pulls back in embarrassment while Bruno laughs at the awkward scene. Kellerhan shocks the Marquis by demanding the engagement ceremony be fully prepared within a single week. The Marquis frantically begs for at least 10 days to organize such a monumental event. Kellerhan begins a cold countdown, sending the Marquis into a state of absolute panic. Holding up a tiny shield, the Marquis desperately pleads for more time to think through the logistics. The Duke remains unmoved, claiming he is already giving them time as the Marquis continues to wail. Bruno calmly offers snacks to the children while the adults continue their chaotic negotiation. Driven to desperation, the Marquis prepares to use his family's secret technique of meticulous accounting. With incredible speed, the Marquis works an abacus and quill as the Duke's countdown continues. As the final second ticks by, the Marquis triumphantly declares that the plan is complete. Exhausted and sweating, the Marquis presents a detailed engagement outline for the Duke's approval. Bruno confirms the budget projections are perfect while the children watch the efficiency in disbelief. Kellerhan expresses his satisfaction with the plan for the upcoming engagement. The scene shifts as the Marquis sobs over the workload while the girl feels a mix of gratitude and concern. Sometime later, Yuta brings a letter from Bruno to share with Isabella over tea and sweets. The letter contains a friendly update from Bruno regarding the sunny weather forecast and the progress of the engagement preparations. The two children sit together in the sun-drenched room, diligently reading the news from the Binkler family. A light-hearted poof sounds as Bruno notes the attention the young stars are receiving. Yuta pauses mid-bite, watching Isabella read with a look of quiet curiosity. Blushing slightly, Yuta admits he is simply very excited for the day of their engagement. Isabella looks down at the letter, wondering how they can ever properly thank the Binkler family for their hard work. A soft scritch sounds as the girl writes, worrying that praising their money might come across as rude. Bruno assures his weary father that they will handle everything else to ensure the event is a success. The blonde servant runs through the hall with papers. Isabella smiles warmly while expressing her sincere gratitude. Turning to the boy, Isabella asks if they had plans together for the day. Yuta looks sheepish as he prepares to explain the situation. A sharp thud sounds as a wooden training sword is presented. A soft rattle sounds as Isabella trembles while holding the sword, as Kellerhan notes they are ready to begin. Kellerhan beckons Isabella forward, leaving her nervous about the sudden intensity of his request. With a stern gaze, the Duke announces the start of a physical fitness test. Isabella looks confused while gripping the wooden sword, questioning the need for a fitness test.
A lighthearted chuckle follows as the Duke leads the children toward the training area.
Yuta promises to be her protector if danger arises, but suggests this training is a necessary precaution. A quick clap sounds as Kellerhan calls for Isabella's attention to begin. The training grounds stand ready under the bright sky. Isabella is horrified as the Duke orders her to run 10 laps around the field. Trembling, the girl asks if the regimen is too intense while internally pleading for Yuta's help. Yuta offers an encouraging smile, telling Isabella he believes in her ability to finish. Heavy breaths sound as Isabella's shadow falls across the dusty ground. Kellerhan expresses disbelief that the girl could only manage 5 laps before tiring. The Duke claims most children her age can run 15 laps, leaving Isabella stunned. A soft scuff sounds as the Duke decides they must prioritize building her basic stamina. With a sudden lift, Kellerhan hoists the girl up and declares that training resumes immediately. Kellerhan insists that endurance is a priority for her future, even for her engagement ceremony. A formal order demands 5 laps followed by 10 minutes of rest in a repeating cycle. Yuta yields to his father's stern command with a quiet acknowledgement. The Duke demands another lap as the exhausted girl continues to run. Gasping for air, Isabella hears the command to go again. Rhythmic footsteps sound as the Duke repeats his order for another lap. Isabella wonders why a future bride is being subjected to such grueling labor. Yuta calls out to the girl in growing concern for her well-being. The boy warns his father that Isabella is on the verge of collapsing from exhaustion. Yuta pleads for the training to stop, but the Duke remains unmoved and silent. A heavy thud sounds as Isabella finally collapses, prompting Yuta to rush to her side. The girl lies motionless on the training ground, completely spent. Labored breaths sound as Isabella struggles to move while pinned to the earth. A quick dash sounds as Yuta asks if she is all right while the girl struggles to breathe. The children look up at the silent Duke as the weight of the session sinks in. A sharp gasp sounds as Isabella's eye snaps open in a moment of panic. With a sudden bolt, the girl sits up in bed, realizing she is no longer outside. A sharp wince follows as a sudden wave of physical pain washes over the girl. Isabella groans in agony while Yuta checks on her from the bedside. Yuta explains that she was brought to the infirmary after collapsing during her training. The boy apologizes for not intervening sooner, but Isabella blames the Duke's extreme methods. A soft creak sounds as a new visitor arrives, noting they have been expected. Isabella and Yuta look toward the door in curiosity, wondering who has entered the room. A brown-haired man greets the lady and introduces himself as Gilbert, a field medic. Gilbert is formally identified as a member of the Gottfried Order. A soft ah sounds as Gilbert begins his examination while the Duke watches from the shadows. Gilbert notes her muscles are severely strained and asks what kind of training she endured. Kellerhan simply calls it training, prompting the medic to ask if it was their usual brutal regimen. Memories of extreme combat drills fill the air as Gilbert reacts with horror to the Duke's actions. The black-haired man tells the medic not to insult him, claiming he tailored the training specifically to the girl's abilities. Kellerhan dismisses the concern by stating he simply had the girl run across the field. Gilbert shouts that she was forced to sprint 5 laps at a time before repeatedly apologizing to Isabella for the treatment. A soft "oh no" sounds as the medic asks the commander what kind of reckless training he was conducting despite her struggle. The Duke admits she looked tired but assumed she was fine since she didn't complain. A weary sigh sounds as Gilbert argues that her exhaustion was obvious and warns the Duke not to treat his future daughter-in-law like a knight. Isabella silently thanks him for the support while worrying about his safety for calling the Duke a mad dog. The medic notes that the girl comes from the prominent Schweitzer family. Gilbert describes her family as a house of brilliant but non-wealthy scholars who are typically quite weak. A soft sounds as Gilbert illustrates how bookish types can barely hold a short sword, leaving the children offended and confused. Kellerhan expresses genuine disbelief that anyone could struggle to lift a small sword, while Gilbert suggests treating scholars like fragile dolls. Gilbert happily offers to handle her physical regimen while the Duke agrees, leaving Isabella horrified at being compared to a straw doll. The Duke decides physical training will stay with Gilbert while he focuses on teaching her basic swordsmanship. Resting a wooden sword on his shoulder, Kellerhan prepares to demonstrate practical combat techniques. The girl nervously grips her own wooden sword while standing in the dusty training area. A rhythmic rattle sounds as Isabella wonders why the training weapon feels so incredibly heavy. The Duke watches her with a silent, piercing gaze. A soft huff sounds as the Duke observes her while the girl reacts with a sudden start. A cold shiver sounds as Isabella worries that the current situation looks very unpromising. 2 stuffed training dummies wait as targets in the afternoon sun. A sharp whoosh sounds as Yuta steps forward while holding his training sword. Isabella realizes she has never actually seen the boy use a sword before today.
Rapid footsteps sound as Yuta lunges forward with incredible speed and precision.
A flurry of strikes sounds as the boy's strikes move too fast for the naked eye to track.
A quick snap sounds as Yuta finishes his movement, leaving the girl in absolute awe. Isabella cheers enthusiastically for Yuta's incredible speed while the embarrassed boy lets out a bashful giggle.
A soft blush sounds as Yuta sheepishly explains it was only a basic thrust while the girl finds him adorable.
A sudden thud sounds as the Duke points to Isabella and demands she try the move herself.
A soft sob sounds as the girl tearfully prepares to swing the heavy sword while Kellerhan orders her forward.
Yuta offers words of encouragement as Isabella approaches the target with her sword raised.
A tight grip sounds as the girl squeezes the hilt with all her might.
Steeling her resolve, Isabella closes her eyes and prepares for her first attempt.
A swift whistle sounds as the sword cuts through the empty air.
A heavy crash sounds as Isabella realizes she missed the target entirely, shocking both the Duke and the boy. With a grim expression, Kellerhan demands she try again as the girl dejectedly agrees. A sharp shout sounds as Isabella swings again while the Duke instructs her to lower her stance. A loud grunt sounds as the girl puts more strength into her swings under the Duke's constant orders. Heavy panting sounds as the girl's stamina begins to fail once again. The training dummy remains perfectly intact, mocking her failed efforts.
A dull thud sounds as the tip of her sword falls uselessly into the dirt.
Frustrated and tired, Isabella laments her inability to even scratch the target or mimic Yuta's form. Labored breaths sound as the girl struggles with numb fingers and a body that feels like lead. The Duke's voice softly calls her name as she remains hunched over in exhaustion.
A sharp gasp sounds as Isabella looks up in surprise at the Duke's sudden change in tone.
Kellerhan looks down at the girl with a complex, unreadable expression.
The Duke kneels before her, placing his hands on her shoulders to get her full attention.
A moment of heavy silence follows as the Duke prepares to speak.
Kellerhan explains that being part of his family brings constant danger, and he wants her to be able to protect herself when no one else is around.
Isabella is left speechless by the Duke's unexpected confession of concern.
A happy giggle sounds as the girl's heart melts with joy upon learning the Duke's true protective intentions.
Kellerhan ends the session questioning Yuta's silly grin before telling the children it's time to head back. Isabella asks the Duke to teach her the move he performed earlier, promising to follow his instructions carefully. A soft peak sounds as the boy happily agrees to her request.
Narrative text reveals the girl's determination to clear her mind and focus on extending her arm properly.
Yuta demonstrates the movement, instructing the girl to keep the sword's tip aimed steadily.
The boy encourages her by explaining the move is simple and there is nothing to fear as the Duke watches.
Isabella closes her eyes and tells herself to remember and visualize the sequence.
Thoughts of how Yuta held his stance fill the girl's mind.
The girl ponders the exact angle of the sword used during the demonstration.
The blonde girl stares ahead with focus.
Rhythmic strikes sound as Isabella lunges forward toward the training dummy.
Stunned silence follows as the Duke and the boy react to her display.
Excitedly pointing at her work, the girl calls out to the Duke to see her success. Wooden sword strikes center of target.
Girl stunned by own sword quest.
A soft scuff sounds as the black-haired man calls out the girl's name. Kellerhan praises the perfection of her thrust while the girl remains silent. A quick dash sounds as Yuta rushes over to check on the bro. A sudden gasp sounds as a realization of pain hits the girl. Man watches with sharp, surprised gaze. Isabella groans in pain as she clutches her wrist, prompting Yuta to ask if she needs medical attention.
Bandaged hand shakes with physical strain.
The boy expresses concern that the physical demands might be too much for her.
A sudden stop sounds as Kellerhan places a hand on the boy's shoulder and tells him to stop speaking.
Heavy footsteps sound as the Duke carries the sleeping girl away from the grounds.
Labored breaths sound as Isabella offers a weak word of thanks while falling asleep.
Girl's hand wrapped in white bandages.
Hand reflection seen in Brew Eye.
A soft thud sounds as the girl lies back on her bed.
A soft hum sounds as the girl triumphantly realizes she succeeded.
Isabella feels a deep sense of pride for her small but significant achievement.
A sharp wince follows as the girl cries out in pain from her wrist. Looking at her injury, the girl reflects on how wonderful it feels to finally achieve something.
Girl lies contentedly in her bed.
Small smile forms on girl's face. Narrative text reveals the girl's long history of lack of effort or achievement since her parents' death. Girl looks up with thoughtful expression. A system window notes the girl's excitement for what the next day will bring. Girl curled up fast asleep tonight.
Formal guests discuss the pressures of attending the event and the consequences of declining.
Guests gossip about the Duke's fearsome reputation as a mad dog and speculate on his behavior today. Spectators are shocked by the Duke's handsome appearance in his formal uniform while he notes the other's tardiness. A sudden call sounds as someone addresses the Duke with respect.
Close up on man's startled eye.
A quick run sounds as Isabella enters in a beautiful gown, breathlessly apologizing for her late arrival.
Isabella wonders about the guest's stares while the Duke mentions Yuta's imminent arrival.
Spectators admire the pair while a voice calls out to the girl from the distance.
Yuta appears in a white suit, looking worried and asking the girl for her opinion. A bright glow sounds as the girl enthusiastically tells the boy he looks incredible.
The boy is left flustered and shocked by the compliment while the girl confirms her statement. Isabella thanks the attendee while they comment on what a beautiful couple the children make.
A gray-haired priest smiles kindly while meeting the pair as Yuta looks on with a confused expression.
The priest introduces his fellow clergy who will be assisting with the engagement ceremony.
The priest credits Duke Barmouth for the temple's survival, while Isabella wonders why so many clergy are present.
Isabella realizes the depth of the situation as the priest praises the Duke's importance to the empire.
Callahan sighs at the unnecessary number of clergy, noting they all seem terrified of him. Isabella observes the tense atmosphere, wishing the fearful clergy would at least try to hide their nervousness.
Callahan stands amidst symbolic red flowers and skeletal hands while wearing a crown.
Callahan notes that everyone seems nervous as the ceremony begins.
A rhythmic thud sounds as Callahan mentions his recent execution of black magicians at the border.
A priest with wavy brown hair smiles thinly while holding a gold cross.
Priest Otten calls the Duke's actions a tragedy, accusing him of committing unnecessary killings. Priest Otten claims the victims were children of the divine, while Callahan finds his perspective interesting.
Images of dark-cloaked figures attacking civilians illustrate Callahan's argument against the priest's sympathy.
A soft gasp sounds as Priest Otten suggests there was surely a way to save everyone involved.
A soft murmur sounds as the gray-haired priest begs Priest Otten to stop his provocative speech. Priest Otten questions if the Duke simply lacked the skill to subdue the magicians without killing them.
Callahan remains silent while staring at the priest with a cold, piercing gaze.
The gray-haired priest urgently reminds everyone that the ceremony is about to begin.
Priest Otten asks for understanding as he claims to be preaching the commandment of mercy. Priest Otten explains that the Lord gives everyone a chance to repent for their sins.
Callahan looks on as the priest cites the angel of punishment to argue that mercy is a primary virtue.
A soft scuff sounds as the priest gloats internally that the Duke has no response.
Isabella is privately outraged, thinking the priest is talking nonsense and ignoring the lives Callahan saved.
Isabella suddenly speaks up, asking the priest what he is trying to prove with his words.
Isabella argues that the Lord is too generous for watching those who toy with human lives, suggesting the priest is misinterpreting divine will.
Rhythmic footsteps sound as the gray-haired priest states the law must protect the weak and punish the guilty.
A cold shiver sounds as Callahan asks if the priest agrees that he shouldn't be obligated to protect monsters.
A heavy silence falls as Callahan suggests the priest preach his message of mercy to the victims of the attack. A sharp glare sounds as Callahan warns he cannot guarantee the priest's safety if he follows through.
Callahan demands the priest stop reciting the stories of the 12 angels immediately.
Isabella sticks her tongue out at the departing priest, feeling a sense of petty triumph.
The gray-haired priest apologizes to the Duke for Priest Otten's disrespectful behavior. Gilbert notes the priest is as fragile as his daughter-in-law while the other clergy look away awkwardly.
Announcement calls for applause to welcome the lovely young couple.
Yuta and Isabella walk happily down the aisle during their engagement ceremony. Narrative text expresses deep gratitude to all the guests who joined the celebration today.
Narrative text declares the gathering a blessing from the Lord for the couple's bright future.
Callahan watches the children while the narrator notes the miracles that brought them to this moment.
Isabella feels a sense of relief as the ceremony finally concludes.
Isabella celebrates becoming a bar mitzvah until an uninvited guest questions why he wasn't informed.
Herbert Rosamund arrives unexpectedly, causing a stir among the crowd.
Callahan points out he didn't send an invitation, but Herbert insists on attending due to their family history.
A red-haired boy watches from the side, thinking Isabella was almost his own fiancée. A sharp smirk sounds as the boy watches the girl with a calculating expression.
Isabella reacts with visible horror at the sight of the newcomers. Dark memories overwhelm Isabella as she vows never to live that way again.
A sudden gasp sounds as Yuta notices Isabella looking pale and frightened. Yuta rushes to Isabella's side, asking if she is feeling unwell.
Yuta promises to protect her, assuring her that he and his father will keep her safe.
Isabella calls Yuta's name softly.
Thoughts of thanking the young master fill the boy's mind as he stares.
Determination fills the blonde girl's eyes.
Callahan demands why Rosamund is barging in and questions his lack of manners.
A sharp clench sounds as Herbert thinks about the Duke's troublesome reputation. Herbert questions how he could miss the engagement of the girl who almost became his daughter-in-law.
Guests whisper about rumors of a pre-existing marriage arrangement between the two families.
Whispers fill the air as guests wonder if the Duke stole the bride.
Herbert thinks his sponsorship efforts contrast sharply with Callahan Barmouth's ruthless image.
Guests whisper that the Barmouth family snatched the girl just to continue their line.
A soft gasp sounds as guests speculate the girl was forced here because she has no ties. A sharp crack sounds as Kellerhan clenches his gloved fist in silent fury.
A soft tug sounds as Isabella reaches for the man's sleeve.
Smiling warmly, Isabella holds the Duke's hand to keep him from acting.
Isabella looks ahead with intense focus. Isabella vows she will never act the way Herbert Rosamond wants her kill.
Memories of dark nights and abusive treatment resurface in the girl's mind.
Curtsying gracefully, Isabella introduces herself as the future daughter-in-law of the Barmouth family. Isabella speaks with a resolute expression. Isabella realizes she must not tremble if she wants to avoid being a fool.
Isabella clarifies that she chose to marry into the Barmouth family of her own free will. Boldly standing her ground, Isabella continues her speech.
Isabella declares she never wanted to marry the unjust Lord Rosamond, leaving Heiner shocked.
Heiner reacts with rage at the girl's bold nonsense. Calling her an insignificant brat, Heiner raises his hand to strike the girl.
A sharp slap sounds as Yuta catches the boy's wrist before he can strike.
Heiner mocks Yuta, asking if he's playing protector just because he's her fiancé. Pointing a finger, Heiner accuses the girl of insulting the 5 ducal families.
A sharp groan sounds as Yuta crushes the red-haired boy's wrist with incredible force.
Heiner is left in shock by the boy's unexpected physical strength.
Isabella urges the boy to let go, calling Heiner an object that shouldn't be touched. Outrage fills Heiner as he realizes she just referred to him as an object. Herbert warns the girl she has gambled with his son's and his family's honor. Herbert points a threatening finger, warning both Isabella and the Duke that they are in deep trouble.
Isabella counters by asking if they remember the Rowan Lake incident. Tense whispers break out among the crowd following the girl's question. A blonde man in a red coat expresses nausea just thinking about the horrifying event.
A vision of a boat trip on a lake filled with dead fish appears.
Narrative text explains that the fish in Rowan Lake died from mass poisoning.
The text notes the investigation was hushed up, though the girl claims to know the truth. A sudden revelation identifies Lord Heiner as the true culprit of the poisoning.
Heiner turns pale and trembles as the accusation hangs in the air.
Guests whisper about the strangeness of a mage poisoning a lake favored by nobles.
Images of dark magic appear as the narrator questions the official story of a bribe.
A memory reveals a mage under Rosamond's patronage being forced into a false confession. Pointing a firm finger, Isabella confronts her accusers head-on.
Herbert calls the claim baseless, while Isabella admits she currently lacks proof. Isabella thinks her current goal is to make a specific person question the incident again.
Isabella calls for someone to listen and step forward immediately. A blonde man with glasses and a choker smiles while talking on a phone. A man speaks with a serious tone, his face partially obscured.
Isabella looks surprised while Yuta stands beside her as she learns that many people felt the previous incident was never properly resolved. Schmidt-Kallman, the vice captain of the order, explains that the Noble Union Police Bureau took over the investigation before his own night order could intervene.
Schmidt-Kallman tells a mustachioed man that he was unfortunately wrong in his previous assumptions about the case. A historical map illustrates the various investigative agencies operating within the empire.
The Noble Union Police Bureau is depicted as an elite organization serving the high-ranking nobility. The Gottfried Night Order is identified as the empire's primary defense against major crimes involving dark magic. A comparison shows the First Night Order handles crimes outside the capital, while the Second Night Order manages internal security.
The Third Night Order is responsible for handling general armed conflicts and minor criminal offenses.
Isabella realizes that the First Night Order must feel deeply humiliated after the police bureau seized their authority over the investigation.
Schmidt-Kallman turns his attention to the young girl and asks for her input.
Isabella looks nervous as she claims she learned the secret information because her parents were under the patronage of the Rosamond family. She explains to the group that she accidentally overheard inspectors discussing the research during their visit.
A sharp kayuk sounding escapes the mustachioed man as he reacts with visible distress and anger.
The mustachioed man tries to dismiss Isabella as a mere child, but Schmidt-Kallman laughs and insists her testimony is perfect.
A soft saw sounding accompanies the man's tight grip on his cane as Schmidt argues that reopening the case will clear the family name.
Whispers fill the room as the crowd agrees that pushing the matter further will only lead to a greater public scandal. The mustachioed man forces a polite smile while a panicked Yuta begs his father to wait. With a dark and menacing expression, the man bids the group farewell until their next meeting. A quick tadadadak sounding follows the man and Yuta as they make a hasty exit from the gathering.
Yuta pauses for a moment to look back and ensure that Isabella is unharmed.
A sudden rack sounding punctuates the moment as Isabella lunges forward to give Yuta a heartfelt hug. A bright hua-ak sounding follows as Yuta's face turns bright red from the unexpected physical affection. Isabella admits that she was only able to find her courage because he was by her side.
She looks at him with genuine gratitude while thanking him for his support.
Yuta is left completely flustered and blushing as Isabella continues to hold him.
Schmidt-Kamen formally introduces himself to Lady Isabella and offers his sincere congratulations on her engagement.
He expresses deep gratitude to Isabella for providing the justification needed to finally reopen the criminal investigation.
Schmidt looks hesitant as he warns Isabella that a public investigation could potentially damage her social standing in the future.
A graphic depicts Isabella being judged and ostracized by high society, suggesting the heavy social cost of her actions.
Schmidt-Kamen is shocked by Isabella's lack of concern for her own reputation.
Isabella reflects on the misery of being an outcast, but decides she would rather see her enemies suffer than worry about social scenes. A low ha sounding accompanies Isabella's dark and vengeful smile as she vows that Heiner will get exactly what he deserves. Isabella lets out a maniacal laugh that leaves the nearby knight looking confused and slightly terrified.
Schmidt-Kamen is deeply moved and awed by the girl's fierce determination and spirit.
The scene shifts to a peaceful and lush green valley overlooking a distant town. A cloaked figure kneeling in the grass notes that a major event has occurred without their knowledge. A red-haired woman on horseback reads a newspaper with a devious grin, finding the latest news very interesting.
Leaves drift through the air as she expresses her eager anticipation for an upcoming meeting.
The red-haired woman's eyes glint with mischief as she whispers Isabella Schweitzer's name.
Schmidt-Kamen impulsively asks to become Isabella's personal knight, much to the shock of Yuta and the dark-haired Callahan.
Callahan casually grabs Schmidt by his cloak and drags him away while Yuta watches in disbelief. A sudden Kong sounding marks Isabella's total shock as she processes everything that just happened. A loud Kong sounding echoes as a heavy official stamp is slammed down onto a document. A soft phallic sounding of papers fills the silence as Isabella sits nervously before Callahan in his office, wondering why he isn't speaking. Isabella panics as she recounts her crimes, including interrupting a conversation and standing up to the powerful Rosamund family. She continues to spiral as she remembers pointing her finger directly at a high-ranking duke. Isabella looks completely dejected, regretting her earlier confidence and bracing herself for a severe scolding. Callahan simply orders her to study, causing Isabella to shout a frantic apology out of pure reflex. A firm tack sounding occurs as Callahan taps a pile of books, announcing that Isabella will now be taking lessons alongside Yuta. The black-haired man sits at his desk focused on writing as he confirms his decision. The man admits he was too busy to start sooner, then tells the boy that the girl will be joining his lessons. A sharp gaze meets the boy as the man questions what exactly he is apologizing for. The man asks if she truly doesn't want the lessons, concluding the matter is settled when she chibis in silent disagreement. Order is given for the boy to proceed to class while the butler is instructed to escort the girl to the study. The blonde girl's face radiates with a shimmering, hopeful energy. A quick sound marks the girl's concern as she asks the butler if her excitement was too obvious.
The girl sprawls out with books, reflecting on her love for learning and the absurdity of her former guardian's ban on it. Thoughts of the teacher and the new subjects fill the air as the black-haired man prepares for the session.
The butler announces their arrival at the shared study as the boy excitedly greets the brawl.
The butler politely asks the children to wait while he goes to find the instructor. The girl gasps in shock as the boy explains his father told him they would be studying together from now on.
The boy begins to explain something further with a cheerful, blushing smile.
The girl erupts in pure academic joy, identifying a rare first-edition history book in the boy's hands.
A sharp gasp sounds as the girl continues to shout out the titles of the prestigious geography book she finds. A joyful exclamation sounds as the girl discovers even more rare memoirs, wishing she had come to the study sooner. A quick knocking sounds as the instructor approaches, interrupting the girl's enthusiastic embrace of a book. A man with dark hair and glasses enters the room, noting the difficulty of the door before offering a formal greeting. The teacher questions the girl's presence, leading the boy to introduce her as his fiancée, while the girl trembles in fear.
Adjusting his glasses, the teacher notes that it would have been better to have received advance notice of her arrival.
The teacher decides to continue with the current curriculum, causing the girl to worry about the strict nature of scholars. Standing before his students, the man formally introduces himself as Philip Meyer, the history and geography teacher. The teacher offers to lend his own book to the girl since her inclusion in the class was unexpected. Moved to tears, the girl thanks her teacher, while the boy kindly offers to share his own materials. A sense of dread washes over the girl as the teacher begins the lesson and instructs them to open their books. Narrative text reveals the girl's painful past, where she was mocked as a foolish and empty-headed fiancé. Dark memories surface of being treated like a plaything and confined to an attic by her previous captors.
A vow of vengeance glows with intensity as the girl promises to ensure her tormentor's downfall.
A sharp tap sounds as the teacher begins a lecture on the ancient tribal wars of the Raguna Mountains. The instructor continues his detailed explanation of the historical conflict.
The boy explains that the Pad tribe likely offered the empire better terms, prompting the teacher to evaluate his answer.
Philip Meyer considers the boy's logic from an economic perspective.
The teacher privately notes the boy is smart but not exceptional, while the girl seems visibly lost.
Internally, the girl is a chaotic mess of nerves and extreme excitement about the challenge. The teacher tells the girl she doesn't have to answer on her first day, trying to ease her apparent anxiety.
A soft sound of movement follows as the girl surprises the teacher by boldly raising her hand to speak.
Philip narrates the differences between the closed-off mountain tribe and the open plains tribe.
Text explains the empire's strategic decision to side with the Pad tribe to secure vital trade routes. The teacher looks on with genuine surprise as he focuses his attention solely on the girl.
The teacher points at the girl while asking about mermaid lore, and she provides the exact historical year of discovery. The boy watches in awe as the girl correctly identifies a complex navigation map projection. The quiz intensifies as the girl rapidly confirms that pearls will indeed dissolve in vinegar.
The boy smiles as he notices the teacher's questions are drifting away from the actual lesson plan.
The teacher is impressed as the girl correctly identifies the animal with the strongest bite force, while she beams with joy.
Memories of a happy childhood resurface as the girl recalls her parents praising her for getting questions right.
The girl vividly remembers the warmth of being embraced by her loving parents.
The boy asks if she is all right when he sees her looking down, and she assures him she is fine. A thoughtful look crosses the teacher's face as he prepares a final, more difficult question. A soft sniffle sounds as the teacher asks why fairies have vanished from the modern world. With tears in her eyes and a resolute voice, the girl explains that fairies cannot survive without the blessing of dragons. A quick, sharp tapping sounds as the teacher waits for a response. A sudden, heavy thud sounds as the man demands to know how they should treat non-human races. Isabella realizes this is a direct test of her internal values and intellect.
Philip Meyer hides his growing surprise as he evaluates the girl's performance.
Philip recalls his past academic life where everything seemed far too simple.
He accepted the tutoring position solely to fund his personal research projects.
He initially believed teaching noble children would be an effortless task. A sharp, papery slap sounds as he faces the reality of uncooperative students. He struggled with a variety of students who lacked either brains or academic motivation. Preparing his thesis without sleep has left him completely exhausted and drained. He admits that teaching the well-behaved Lord Yuta is his only source of relief.
The butler apologizes for the surprise as he introduces a new student for the lessons.
Isabella's flawless grasp of specialized knowledge and lore leaves the teacher stunned. Isabella worries that she allowed her excitement for learning to become too obvious. The teacher presents a complex philosophical question to gauge Isabella's unique perspective.
Isabella explains that her views were shaped by frequent discussions with her late parents.
Philip is taken aback by her progressive view on equal rights for all races.
He wonders if she simply prepared her answers in advance to impress him.
He concludes that she must come from a family that prioritized intellectual growth.
Isabella mentions her scholar parents passed away due to a mysterious phenomenon called the void. Philip begins to sweat as he realizes the significance of her family name. Isabella formally introduces herself as the daughter of the famous Schweitzer family. Philip reacts with explosive shock, recognizing her parents as his personal academic heroes.
He acknowledges that her parents were legendary figures in the scholarly community.
A sense of deep reverence fills the man's posture. He finds her intellect far exceeds even the impressive rumors he had heard. Yuta looks on with a silent expression of genuine awe and amazement. Yuta is impressed that she understood complex engineering at such a young age. Philip falls into a quiet state of deep reflection and professional contemplation. The teacher turns his full attention back toward his brilliant new student. A soft, rustling bow sounds as Philip formally apologizes for his earlier lack of professionalism. Isabella warmly assures him that his challenging questions actually helped her feel comfortable.
Isabella expresses her sincere excitement for the rest of their educational journey together.
Philip solemnly accepts his new responsibility with a look of intense focus. Isabella lets out a tired stretch after finishing the rigorous academic session. Yuta is pleased to see that Isabella enjoyed her first formal lesson. Isabella's enthusiasm for more subjects leaves the young boys slightly overwhelmed. A new teacher named Jane arrives to lead the music and dance curriculum. Isabella offers a polite apology for her sudden inclusion in the social class. Jane welcomes her warmly, noting that dancing is more enjoyable with more participants.
The instructor decides to begin their very first lesson with social dancing.
The pair begins to learn the waltz, described as the flower of social dance. Isabella feels hesitant because she is unfamiliar with the various styles of the dance. She expresses a deep fear of messing up the complicated steps in front of others.
Yuta offers a comforting whisper, suggesting they take their first steps together slowly.
Isabella agrees to begin the lesson immediately following the instructor's technical explanation. A rhythmic clapping sounds as Jane calls out the formal dance commands.
Jane continues to clap firmly, emphasizing the timing of the movements. Jane erupts in frustration as Isabella struggles to grasp the basic steps after an hour.
Isabella's world begins to spin as she reaches her physical limit for the day.
Isabella collapses in frustration over the extreme difficulty of the formal dance steps.
She's baffled by Yuta's natural talent for social dance while she remains dizzy and confused.
Isabella openly expresses her intense jealousy toward the young master's effortless skill. Isabella laments being outclassed by a child while Yuta responds with a bewildered thank you.
Encouraging musical symbols and a small drawing signal the conclusion of the rigorous lesson.
Yuta notices Isabella's physical exhaustion as they begin to climb the grand staircase.
Despite her fatigue, she resolves to build more stamina to handle future academic and social burdens. She motivates herself to overcome future challenges against the rival family without showing weakness.
A sharp tap sounds against the polished wood as someone prepares to enter. The silver-haired knight notes the report is finished while his red-haired companion calls out to Bella.
The red-haired man asks about tomorrow's training while checking if his companion is paying attention. A sudden, quick movement sounds as the knight leaps forward with unexpected speed.
The red-haired man reacts with panic to Bella's sudden and highly inappropriate appearance at the residence.
Bella leaps into the air with playful energy and a joyful expression.
A quick, sharp landing sounds on the carpeted floor as she reaches her destination.
Bella tearfully interrupts the children to ask if she can join their interesting conversation. Isabella is caught off guard and visibly startled by the knight's sudden and energetic intrusion. Bella's over-the-top affection and heart gestures leave Isabella questioning who this strange person is. The knight continues her overly enthusiastic greeting while leaning toward the surprised children. The red-haired man demands that Bella apologize immediately for frightening the young lady. Bella reacts with genuine, wide-eyed confusion to the sudden and harsh scolding. Bella frantically wonders if she has committed another mistake while her companion confirms her fault. The red-haired man expresses his long-standing frustration with Bella causing trouble for the order.
Yuta formally introduces the group as members of his family's prestigious knight order.
Isabella is stunned to learn that these eccentric people are actually legendary warriors. Velmer introduces herself with an overwhelming amount of personal warmth while grasping Isabella's hands. Isabella reacts with wide-eyed shock to the woman's aggressive friendliness.
Narrative text details the legendary reputation and fierce loyalty of the Gottfried Knight Order.
Isabella considers the knight's busy schedule and wonders if the old duke overworks them.
Isabella is impressed by the reality of meeting famous knights who seem so cool and friendly.
Velmor insists that her subordinates provide their own formal introductions to the young lady. Schulden, Eric, and Jürgen offer their brief and somewhat reluctant introductions to Isabella. Isabella finds the knights much more approachable and kind than their fierce reputation suggested. Velmer expresses her delight at meeting the captain's cute new daughter-in-law. Isabella struggles as the knight's affection becomes physically overwhelming and uncomfortably close. A soft rustling sound marks Eric lifting the girl away from Velmor's suffocating embrace. A quick, light tap sounds as Isabella's feet are placed gently back onto the floor. Eric apologizes for the chaos while his companions continue to bicker over proper social distance. The knights offer their assistance to Yuta and Isabella for any future training needs. The scene shifts to the training grounds the next day for a physical skill assessment. Isabella prepares to demonstrate her strength by striking the practice target with all her might. A rhythmic thumping sounds as the observers watch Isabella's first strike with anticipation.
Yuta encourages Isabella despite the knight's visible disappointment in her actual physical strength.
Isabella swings her practice sword with a loud, determined shout to silence the doubting knights. A heavy panting sounds as the knights react with shock to the girl's total lack of power.
Schulden realizes why their captain issued a specific warning about the girl's training requirements.
Yuta steps in to defend Isabella's efforts against any potential scolding from the knights. Isabella feels betrayed by Yuta's unintentional insult regarding her weakness and declares her hatred for him. Velmer considers the situation with a serious and contemplative expression after seeing Isabella's struggle. Velmer proposes that Isabella try a different weapon to find a better match for her specific abilities. Eric suggests that trying out various weapons will help Isabella find one that suits her. Holding her massive battle axe, Velmer mentions that she also struggled with weapons before finding this specific one, as Jürgen and Eric nod in agreement. Yuta notices the interaction and explains that this is a common habit among the knights. Many knights give their weapons nicknames or treat them as dear friends. Velmor adds that on the battlefield, the only things one can truly rely on are themselves and their weapons. A knight develops a deep, inseparable attachment to their equipment, which is why they choose them so carefully. A quick, soft gulp sounds as Yuta listens intently to the explanation. He gently tells Isabella not to rush and that they will take their time to find her the right one. Velmer enthusiastically offers to let Isabella see their own weapons, which the girl eagerly accepts. The group cheers and runs off toward the demonstration area together.
Vilmer is visibly excited to demonstrate her skills after such a long time. Velmer prepares to strike with her massive axe, calling out that she is ready to begin. A sharp stomp sounds as the narration notes that a powerful weapon can crush even the strongest enemy defenses. With a great swing, Velmer brings her axe down with immense force.
Jurgen shows off his proficiency with a long spear, striking a target from a distance as the axe strike clears the area. 3 arrows hit a target in quick, rhythmic succession. The bow's long range allows for both assassinations and support from a distance. Eric stands ready with his bow, leaving Isabella and Yuta completely awestruck.
Isabella claps her hands excitedly and exclaims how cool the knights look.
The knights gather around and tell Isabella that it is finally her turn to try. The trio looks on with sweating, worried expressions at the young girl.
They realize their weapons are far too heavy, tight, or long for the delicate Isabella.
Velmer yells at Eric for making the young lady cry, while he frantically defends himself.
Isabella blushes and looks confused, asking about a building called the Annex.
Eric smiles and confirms that they are heading to that specific location.
Inside a cluttered room, a brown-haired person works feverishly at a desk while muttering to themselves.
The figure mutters about increasing explosive power and making the timer adjustable on a complex blueprint.
Looking at the bomb designs, the inventor wonders how they will actually construct such a device.
A blonde man with glasses adjusts his ponytail while talking on a smartphone.
Eric continues the explanation, hoping they might find something suitable for Isabella in the annex.
Isabella hears a rumor that the building is haunted by the ghosts of those who died working there every night. The exhausted inventor pauses for a moment, sensing an intrusion.
Eric gestures toward a door, explaining that this is where the Night Order's weapons are designed and built.
He opens a door and explains that they mainly invent tools to aid in battle. A frantic, brown-haired woman lunges out, causing Isabella to scream in terror at what she assumes is an overworked ghost.
The disheveled woman begs for someone to save her because she cannot take the workload anymore.
She continues to cry out about the never-ending work and her inability to figure out how to finish it.
She thrusts a resignation letter forward, desperately pleading for it to be accepted.
Eric tries to calm Caroline down while she begs for death so she can finally go home.
Caroline looks up with teary eyes behind her round glasses, her panic beginning to fade. Isabella stands frozen, surprised to realize the ghost is actually a real person. The brown-haired woman formally introduces herself as Caroline Dolph.
A sudden crash sounds in the messy workshop, followed by a startled gasp from the girl.
Velmer introduces Caroline as the Order's exceptionally capable green mage. Isabella is intrigued by the presence of a green mage within a Night Order. 3 muscular gray figures pose to demonstrate the various combat styles and characteristics based on physical weapons. 3 cloaked figures in red, black, and green represent the different paths of magic. Green mages are known for researching new tools and powers for the benefit of everyone.
Those who lose themselves to the power of the void and black mist become dangerous entities.
These individuals are known as black mages, who abandon morality to serve their own selfish purposes.
Narrative text explains that red mages exist between the paths of green and black magic.
Isabella thinks about how she has only ever heard rumors regarding the details of these mages.
Narrative text notes the rare occurrence of a non-combatant green mage serving within a Night Order.
Isabella considers the brown-haired woman's talent as the mage notices the girl's intense stare. Caroline worries she was staring too much, while Isabella admits her curiosity about the woman's work. Caroline explains that the blueprint for a bomb requested by the captain is the source of her stress. Caroline enthusiastically reveals a secret mission to Valen Valley to destroy Foxstones using her device.
Jurgen scolds Caroline for revealing a secret mission while she laments her inability to finish the design.
Caroline frantically begs Isabella to forget her words, assuming the young girl has no interest in such things. The green mage looks on with wide, glistening eyes behind her large glasses. Isabella stares intently at the complex blueprint spread out on the table before her. Caroline offers to let the girl take a closer look, which Isabella accepts with an excited shout. The knights and Yuta watch with fond smiles as Isabella curiously examines the cluttered workstation.
Caroline watches the girl with a blush, thinking about how curious she must be after meeting a mage.
A memory surfaces of a younger Caroline standing beside a brown-haired man at a research desk. Caroline smiles warmly and tells Isabella that the blueprint reminds her of her own childhood. The blueprint detailed on the parchment shows a square-shaped container with various internal mechanisms.
Isabella points out the specific shape of the bomb, surprising the inventor who didn't expect her to recognize it.
The knights admit their lack of understanding, while Isabella notes how different this is from other bombs. A standard spherical black bomb with a simple fuse is shown for comparison. Isabella notes that most bombs are typically shaped like spheres or pipes. The young girl places her hands on the blueprint as she continues to study the unique design. Caroline explains that her primary goal for the design is to ensure easy installation on the battlefield. Jurgen finally understands why the device is square, as he imagines it fitting perfectly into a rock crevice.
Caroline clarifies that she is actually attempting to construct a bomb that explodes at a predetermined time. The mage continues her explanation with a nervous expression as she considers the technical difficulties. She notes that while the power and form are decided, the length of the fuse remains the primary issue. A vision shows a long fuse being easily spotted by an enemy while Caroline collapses from exhaustion. Isabella looks up with a thoughtful and slightly worried expression as she listens to the dilemma. Caroline looks down with teary eyes, feeling the weight of her unfinished task and lack of sleep. Isabella suggests coiling the fuse inside the bomb to make it burn longer while remaining hidden from view.
Jurgen, Velmor, and Eric let out a collective shout of amazement at the girl's clever suggestion. Yuta claps his hands with joy and cheers for how amazing Isabella's idea is. A flustered Isabella waves her arms and begs everyone to pretend they didn't hear her embarrassing suggestion.
Caroline enters a trance-like state of muttering as she calculates how to implement the spiral fuse idea. A sudden, firm grab sounds as Caroline seizes Isabella's hands in a moment of intense realization.
Caroline shouts that the idea is amazing and will definitely work once they begin the testing phase. The mage is overcome with ecstatic joy, while Isabella looks on with a bewildered expression.
A quick, firm grip sounds as Caroline rolls up the parchment, declaring that she cannot delay any longer. Caroline drags a shocked Isabella toward the door, insisting that they leave immediately for their next destination. The green mage is filled with a sense of renewed purpose and pure happiness. In a grand meeting hall, the Duke sits at the head of a long table surrounded by his knights.
The Duke leans forward with a cold and imposing gaze, his hands clasped firmly in front of his face.
A rhythmic thumping sounds as the Duke calls the meeting to order while Caroline enters with a startled Isabella. The Duke asks Caroline if she has successfully finished the specific tasks he assigned to her.
He continues his stern questioning while the other knights at the table watch with tense expressions. The Duke's cold voice demands to know why she has brought his young daughter-in-law to a secret meeting.
A heavy thud sounds as the Duke stares intensely at Isabella, who wonders why he is speaking so harshly.
Caroline enthusiastically credits the young lady's idea for finally allowing her to find a solution to the problem.
Jurgen reacts with total shock as he realizes that the child was the one who solved the mage's technical issue.
A loud bang sounds as a gloved hand strikes the table while a cold voice demands to know what Caroline just said.
Leaning over the table with a shocked expression, the blonde man asks for confirmation that the young lady really assisted her. A rhythmic stomp sounds as the blonde man marches toward the girl with a highly dramatic and unusual gait.
He looms over Isabella with a flushed face and wide eyes, overwhelmed by the realization that she is only 9 years old.
Isabella sweats nervously as the man stares at her with intense, glistening eyes.
The blonde man breaks down in tears of admiration, marveling at how such tiny hands could accomplish such an incredible feat.
He expresses his deep disappointment in Caroline for delaying such important news, while the mage frantically explains she only just met the girl today.
The man is visibly moved by Isabella's brilliance, though the young girl finds his emotional reaction quite strange despite his handsome appearance.
A small version of the man explains that his duties as vice captain kept him too busy to visit her sooner. Surrounded by glowing flowers, the blonde man kneels before Isabella and formally introduces himself as Abraham Blasaha. A sudden, firm grip sounds as a black-gloved hand clamps down onto Abraham's face. The black-haired Duke looms behind the vice captain with a murderous glare, asking who gave him permission to touch the girl's hand.
Isabella lets out a terrified scream, begging for the confrontation to stop before something terrible happens.
A giant black dragon appears in a vision, licking its lips as it prepares to devour a tiny, weeping Isabella. Narrative text explains the sudden appearance of the beast as the young girl cries out in despair. A flashback reveals Callahan setting a nearly impossible condition for Calman, who desperately wanted to become Isabella's knight.
Callahan's past demand to hunt a dragon is recalled as the fearsome black beast let out a thunderous roar.
In the meeting hall, the knights whisper about rumors that Calman is already out searching for a real dragon to hunt. Isabella blushes deeply, her face becoming hot as she listens to the surrounding gossip. The knights erupt in excitement, asking the captain for permission to attempt the same challenge for a similar reward. They acknowledge that dragons are rare and hard to find, which only seems to increase their enthusiasm for the task. A soft sigh escapes the Duke as he prepares to address his rowdy knights. With a cold and piercing gaze, the black-haired man commands absolute silence in the room. The knights immediately go still and stand at attention, silenced by the Duke's overwhelming authority. Watching the display of power, Isabella is left completely awestruck by the captain's presence. Caroline informs Isabella that the testing phase for their new device will begin in 3 days. The brown-haired mage ponders the potential success of the upcoming experiment with a serious expression. A quick click sounds as she adjusts her plans, deciding to shorten the timeline to only 2 days.
With a determined and slightly sinister smile, Caroline decides that 2 days of preparation will be sufficient.
The Duke gives his final approval, ordering the team to start the process immediately. At the training grounds, Caroline kneels to place the square device precisely on the target area. From the distance, the mage waves her arms to signal the captain that all preparations are complete. She explains the signaling process and confirms that the device is designed to detonate exactly 3 minutes after ignition.
A rhythmic ticking sounds as the captain opens his golden pocket watch to monitor the countdown.
Upon the command to begin, the fuse on top of the square container is successfully ignited. The black-haired man watches the ticking watch with a steady, focused gaze as the seconds pass. Isabella clasps her hands together and prays fervently for the invention to work as they planned.
A sharp click sounds as the second hand on the pocket watch reaches the final mark.
Isabella's eyes widen with excitement as she realizes the device is functioning perfectly.
A massive explosion roars in the distance, sending debris into the air as the girl lets out a long sigh of relief.
A giant smoking crater is left in the ground, and Isabella is amazed by the devastating power of their creation. A soft pat sounds as the Duke places his gloved hand on Isabella's head in a rare gesture of affection. The black-haired man looks down at the young girl with a gentle and genuine smile of approval. Isabella's face lights up with pure joy as she receives the unexpected praise. Back in her room, the girl rolls on her bed with a wide smile while hugging a stuffed duck. Narrative text notes that this is the very first time the Duke has ever praised another person. Isabella continues to roll around happily, unable to contain her excitement over the successful day. Hugging her toy tightly, she feels a deep sense of accomplishment for being a big help to the Order. A quick tap sounds as she pokes the stuffed duck's beak, wondering what kind of reward she might receive. Isabella gazes at her toy with a thoughtful and happy expression as she drifts toward sleep.
Isabella reflects on the luxury of having kind servants who don't ignore or torment her. A detailed look at open books filled with ancient and mysterious script. The young girl thinks about how greedy it would be to ask for more when she already has so much.
Resting her head on her arms, the blonde girl stares ahead with a peaceful expression.
She worries that her refusal might lead to Callahan holding on to the matter instead of letting it go.
A soft puff of air escapes her as she admits her uncertainty to herself. Isabella cuddles her stuffed duck tightly, her eyes closed in a moment of pure bliss.
A faint shushing sounds as someone calls for silence in the darkness.
Feeling restless, Jurgen urges the other knight to hurry before the captain gets angry, while his comrade focuses on the precise placement of the bombs. A quick crackle sounds as the fuse is lit on the square device placed among the glowing crystals.
Callahan steps firmly onto a rock, noting how slow his subordinates are as a rhythmic tap sounds.
A sudden tap sounds as Jurgen explains that they rushed back after carefully calculating the bomb positions. A massive boom sounds as Jurgen excitedly asks if the demonstration was a great success. A cheerful whistle note sounds as Jurgen notes that the device's performance is quite solid.
A sharp shink sounds as Callahan draws his sword, ordering all units to prepare for combat and confirm the stone's destruction.
A resonant swing sounds as the cloaked knights draw their glowing blades, under orders to let no enemy escape.
A heavy thud sounds as a gloved hand reaches for a hooded enemy who has been bound with rope.
Jurgen reports the total destruction of the fogstones while a tied-up prisoner curses a man named Gottfried.
Callahan offers a rare smile while praising the group for their good work and minimal casualties.
Back at home, Isabella remembers the Duke's promise to reward her generously upon his return.
Isabella and Yuta react with wild-eyed excitement to a colorful illustration of a mandrake root.
The black-haired scholar explains that while herbology isn't his specialty, he is familiar with regional herbs. Adjusting his glasses, the man notes his surprise that both children wanted to study herbology together.
Yuta asks to learn about medicinal herbs, while Isabella inquires about plants with magical properties.
Narrative text notes a sense of curiosity regarding Isabella's hidden plans for the lesson. The scholar prepares to teach the children about the most common herbs found in the Burkle Kingdom.
A rhythmic tap sounds as the teacher draws flowers on the board, explaining the uses of the blue glow and winter trumpet flowers.
Isabella is impressed by how knowledgeable the man is, despite herbology being outside his usual field. The young girl ponders the best reward to ask of Callahan while looking at her study materials. Isabella sits quietly at the desk, lost in thought as she considers her options. Yuta and Isabella sit closely together, both focused intently on the scholar's lecture. A soft thump-thump sounds as Yuta looks at the girl, quietly echoing her sentiments to himself. Standing at his desk, the teacher thinks about his desire to be helpful to Isabella as he continues the lesson. A dark aura surrounds the illustration as the scholar warns the children about herbs containing potent toxins. He details the irritating effects of the thornflower and the paralyzing scent of the red-yellow herb. Isabella's eyes widen as she realizes that one of the plants is exactly what she needs. A soft flop sounds as Isabella slumps over in exhaustion, her soul seemingly drifting away while Yuta watches in concern. Yuta presents a red book to Isabella, explaining that he knows the subject matter was difficult for her. Isabella is touched to see that Yuta took detailed notes on the various flowers just for her. Blushing slightly, the boy explains that he thought sharing his notes would be helpful since she missed some parts. Yuta looks at her with hopeful eyes, asking if his efforts were actually useful.
Isabella shouts her confirmation with excitement, clutching the notebook to her chest.
Grabbing the boy's hands, the girl expresses her immense relief and gratitude to him. A faint murmuring sounds from outside, making Isabella wonder if someone has just arrived. A quick rustle sounds as Isabella rushes to the window while Yuta reflects on her calling him by his name. The young girl's face breaks into a radiant and joyful smile. Callahan arrives at the estate on a powerful black horse as a loud shout welcomes him back. A rhythmic pitter-patter sounds as the children run to meet the Duke, who declares the mission a total success. Yuta asks if the destruction of the Fogstones will cause trouble with the Red Mages or the Noble Union. Callahan's red eyes glow with confidence as he dismisses the threat, questioning what their enemies could possibly do. Isabella looks nervous and thinks about how the man fits the description of a mad dog. The Duke tells the boy that it is too early to worry and he should focus on his training. Yuta accepts his father's command while Isabella reflects on the plan to pass the Night Order's leadership to the boy. Narrative text notes that it is difficult to imagine the current, gentle version of the boy doing anything harsh. Isabella is shocked as she imagines the boy undergoing brutal training while he innocently eats a cookie. A soft switch sounds as Callahan pats the girl's head, prompting her to offer a quiet response. The black-haired man narrows his red eyes as he questions her mention of a weapon. Isabella confirms his question with a bright and determined smile. The girl's voice rings out as she declares her intention to create the item herself. A series of loud caw-caw sounds echo as a bird flies over the three silent figures standing in the garden. A sudden crack sounds as Isabella frantically explains she isn't making anything dangerous, while Callahan watches with a terrifying expression. Callahan offers land or gold as a reward instead, causing Isabella to react with pure confusion. Isabella is horrified by the idea of being treated like a criminal before Callahan reveals he was only joking. A soft squish sounds as the girl grips her dress, considering if material wealth would be better for her future. Narrative text explains the realization she came to after experiencing a past tragedy. A grim flashback shows Isabella lying motionless on the floor, surrounded by broken pieces of a plate. The girl's hand reaches out weakly in the dark, silent room. A series of heavy ha-ha breaths sound as the girl struggles in her final moments. Returning to the present, Isabella addresses the Duke formally as they stand together by the fountain. Isabella states her desire to become strong, causing the black-haired man to pause in surprise. She explains her need to be powerful enough to protect herself and maintain her own path. A hazy memory shows the Duke kneeling to place his hands on the young girl's shoulders. Isabella expresses her hope to be useful to the Barmouth family through her own strength. The black-haired man rests his hand on his chin as he listens to her explanation. Callahan asks for specifics regarding the device she intends to construct. Isabella reveals her plan for a throwing bomb, leaving Yuta completely speechless. The young girl holds up the square device with a short fuse, visualizing its potential. She proposes the idea of making the weapon small enough for anyone to carry easily. Isabella explains that she would replace standard gunpowder with powder that causes sleep or paralysis. A faint ha sound is made by a figure falling into a deep sleep due to the smoke from the device. Isabella suggests attaching the bombs to projectiles, but Yuta immediately shuts down the idea. The boy tells Isabella that there is absolutely no need for her to take such measures. Yuta vows to protect the girl himself, prompting a surprised reaction from Isabella. In a memory of their training, Yuta explains that their practice sessions were meant for learning, not actual combat. The boy emphasizes that he never wants to see her in danger and suggests they find a different hobby. A soft awe escapes Isabella as Yuta takes her hands in his, both of them blushing. Isabella looks down at her hands, feeling the weight of the boy's sincere concern. The girl wonders if she is asking for too much from the people around her. Narrative text reflects on Yuta's warning about the dangers she might face. Callahan watches the interaction between the two children with a thoughtful gaze. The brown-haired woman with glasses excitedly praises the girl, confident that the new invention will work. Isabella recalls the feeling of being praised by Callahan for her hard work. A close-up reveals the wonder in the girl's large blue eyes. Narrative text highlights the thrill she felt after accomplishing a task on her own during training.
A sharp huff sounds as Isabella steels her resolve, her mouth set in a firm line.
Isabella thanks the Duke for his worry, but makes it clear that her decision hasn't changed. With a radiant smile, the girl insists on doing everything within her power to help. Isabella reminds the Duke of his own advice about knights choosing their own gear, leaving Yuta dizzy with confusion. A faint muttering sounds as Yuta tries to argue that the rule only applies to trained knights. The boy tries to protest further, but the conversation has already moved forward.
Room! A sudden, sharp focus fills Callahan's red eyes.
The black-haired man remains silent as he looks down at the boy.
Yuta shouts that his father is being too harsh on Isabella.
The boy declares his intent to protect Isabella since she is his bride.
Callahan is stunned into silence by his son's bold declaration.
The father warns against empty promises, while the boy insists he can protect her. A sudden crash and swoosh sound as the two argue over Isabella's safety. Isabella screams for them to stop, prompting the Duke to question her trust.
The two men are startled as the girl scolds them for fighting in front of her. A series of loud drops sound as Isabella cries out in distress.
A soft sniff sounds as Yuta asks Isabella if she truly doesn't trust the Duke. Looking up with sad blue eyes, the girl wonders how she could ever doubt them. A sudden poof and creak sound as Isabella lists all the times they have saved her. A soft squeak sounds as Isabella expresses her deep gratitude to the blushing boy. Isabella smiles brightly while reminding him that she is a Barmouth Tudo. The blonde-haired girl looks forward with a hopeful and sincere expression. Isabella thinks about how unfair the situation is while they hold hands. A sudden whoosh sounds as Yuta feels a thrilling sensation during the moment. Isabella is surprised by the unusual and intense look on the boy's face.
The girl is overwhelmed by how cute the boy is being. Callahan notes that her voice is trembling despite the giggles.
Looking at the castle, the Duke reflects on how much growing the boy still has to do. A heavy thump sounds as bags are dropped into a wooden crate.
A worker sighs with relief after moving the heavy materials across the yard.
A laborer asks where to place a bag as Isabella reviews her blueprints nearby.
Isabella cheerfully confirms the worker's question while overseeing the delivery.
The brown-haired scholar is thrilled to teach the girl about weapon development.
Narrative text notes that high-quality materials were provided following Callahan's request.
The Binkler family provides support for the project as chibi figures offer encouragement.
A rhythmic clang sounds as the blacksmiths begin their work in the forge.
The scene shifts to the design phase of Isabella's new project. Isabella looks at the blank pages with a serious and determined gaze. The scholar explains that a solid foundation of knowledge is required for any design. Isabella is overwhelmed as the woman explains the properties of various materials. Wiping her forehead, the girl realizes that the first step is much harder than expected. Isabella prepares to take her finished blueprint to the next stage of the plan. The tanned blacksmith immediately refuses to make a prototype of the device. Isabella's eyes widen in shock at the sudden and blunt rejection. The blacksmith dismisses the plan as child scribbles, while Isabella wonders if they even looked at it. A loud bang sounds as Isabella demands the blacksmith look at the blueprint before saying no. The dreadlocked woman agrees to check the plans, though she doubts it will change her mind. The blacksmith's golden eyes narrow as she carefully examines the girl's work. To Isabella's joy, the woman changes her mind and agrees to prepare the prototype. Isabella bows deeply while thanking the workshop staff for their help. The old blacksmith scolds the younger one for being rude to the young lady. The woman explains that she was ultimately swayed by the girl's audacity. The blacksmith is intrigued by Isabella's plan to create a weapon that doesn't hurt people.
A loud yawn sounds as night falls over the towers of the estate.
Isabella struggles to stay awake while continuing her research at the desk. A series of clangs sound as the blacksmith showcases her skills to Isabella the next morning. Isabella grinds ingredients while the dark-haired researcher suggests making the particles even smaller. A soft sigh sounds as the exhausted researcher watches the girl's progress. A heavy thud sounds as the researcher collapses face down from sheer exhaustion. After an accidental explosion, Yuta notes that they used far too much gunpowder. Isabella watches with wide-eyed admiration as the red-haired woman carves a wooden slingshot. Yuta observes from the shadows as Isabella finds her demanding research both tiring and exciting. The blonde girl celebrates with a radiant smile as her project is finally completed. Isabella proudly presents her latest invention, the Sleep Bomb Mark I. A series of quick, rhythmic taps sound as boots move across the training grounds. Isabella entrusts the new weapon to the Duke and asks him to handle it carefully. Callahan examines the device and concludes that a slingshot was an excellent choice. A sudden, sharp focus fills the black-haired man's intense red eyes. Callahan prepares to test the bomb's effectiveness against a wild boar in the arena. A sharp snap sounds as the Duke draws the slingshot back to full tension. Callahan aims the device at the target with a confident and knowing smirk. A swift whoosh sounds as the small red bomb is launched into the air. Thick smoke billows as the startled boar lets out a series of grunts. A soft groan sounds as the beast collapses onto the ground after inhaling the smoke. The wild boar falls into a deep, peaceful sleep within the arena. Isabella cheers for their success while Callahan looks on with a sweat-beaded expression. Moved to tears, Isabella thanks everyone and vows to continue her hard work.
Callahan watches silently as workers haul the sleeping animal out of the training area. The Duke begins to praise the girl's accomplishments before being interrupted by a loud call. Both Callahan and Isabella turn in surprise as someone approaches them from behind. A frantic, gray-haired maid arrives shouting about an urgent letter for the young lady. A close-up reveals a formal white envelope sealed with a red wax emblem. Callahan and Isabella react with shock to the news of an urgent letter from the palace. The Emperor invites Isabella to a tea party, much to the girl's annoyance and confusion. A curious hum sounds as the scene shifts toward the imperial palace. A soft chuckle sounds as the hidden figure anticipates the upcoming meeting. The white-haired emperor expresses his desire to see Isabella's reaction to the invitation. A sudden shout sounds as the Barmouth household erupts into a state of panic. Maids argue over Isabella's appearance as they scramble to prepare her for the event. A sharp tug sounds as a maid struggles with the girl's stubborn hair. Isabella reflects on her past life and realizes the emperor's true reasons for the summons. The girl views the tea party as a mere stage for the emperor to flaunt his generosity. Narrative text explains how the royal family uses such invitations to maintain their public image. Isabella views the gathering as a cage where she and Yuta are subjected to polite coercion. The girl laments her position, feeling like little more than an exhibit for others' amusement. Callahan notices her distress and offers her the choice to decline the invitation. The Duke stands tall and intimidating in his elegant formal attire. A cold and calculating focus fills the black-haired man's red eyes. Isabella resolves to attend the party to prove her success and silence any rumors. Callahan smirks and suggests that they use this opportunity to make their stance clear. The blonde girl is puzzled and asks exactly what the Duke intends to clarify. A heavy thud sounds as Callahan asserts his dominance by leaning into the frame. The Duke enters an intensely competitive mode that leaves Isabella feeling terrified. Isabella stares back with wide eyes, overwhelmed by the man's sudden change in energy. The room is left in a chaotic mess of dresses as the pair stands frozen in shock. Isabella sheepishly admits her total indecision regarding what outfit to wear for the party. Callahan snaps his fingers while ordering the maids to prepare Isabella's outfit, leaving the girl shocked by his sudden decisiveness. The scene shifts as warm sunlight bathes the high stone walls of a castle, adorned with a grand red banner. A sudden whoosh sounds as Isabella peeks from behind a stone pillar, while a man in formal attire walks through the hallway. A series of rhythmic taps sound as Isabella wonders about their destination before being startled by a loud, familiar call. A quick tap sounds as Isabella reacts with wide-eyed shock to someone's sudden and enthusiastic appearance. Sir Abraham arrives with an energetic leap and a boisterous shout, much to Isabella's utter confusion. A rhythmic step sounds as Callahan calls out to the knight with a chilling and intense focus in his red eyes. The blonde knight is comically frozen and spun through the air after Callahan forces him to stop his frantic approach. The knight greets the pair with a bow while Callahan watches the interaction with a clearly annoyed expression. The blonde-haired man looks on with a calm and unusually focused gaze. A soft ha-ha sounds as Abraham expresses how deeply moved he is by Isabella's upcoming social debut. A soft ha-ha sounds as Isabella reflected on how they have only met twice despite his intense emotional display. Isabella is struck by a sudden realization regarding the true reason for the captain's presence at the estate. A sudden sharp click sounds as a gloved hand turns a heavy key in a lock to open a secure door. Callahan looks back over his shoulder and announces his intent to grant Isabella access to the family's jewel vault. Peeking from behind the pillar, Isabella is filled with curiosity at the mention of the secret Barmouth vault. Isabella is blinded by a brilliant, shimmering light and gasps at the incredible treasures revealed before her. Sunlight glimmers off the magnificent white towers and golden spires of the grand imperial palace. Guests at the tea party exchange whispers and rumors about the emperor's secret motives for hosting the gathering. The massive white doors are thrown open as a herald announces the grand arrival of the Duke of Barmouth. A blonde noblewoman notes the timely arrival of the group with a look of genuine surprise. The woman blushes and laughs while admiring the newcomers as they enter the ballroom. A sudden gasp sounds as the guests marvel at how charming Isabella and Yuta look in their matching blue outfits. Isabella reluctantly admits that Callahan has excellent taste, while noting that even Yuta's attire matches her own. Isabella recalls how Magda and the maids were moved to tears of joy while praising her appearance during preparations. Isabella asks the black-haired boy if he is feeling unwell as they navigate the crowded palace event. A sudden rhythmic thump sounds as Yuta blushes and smiles warmly at a bashful Isabella. Isabella is overwhelmed by Yuta's cuteness after he boldly vows to protect her from everyone at the party. A tall figure approaches the group while noting the high levels of energy displayed by the children. The gray-haired emperor greets the group with a friendly wave and a warm, welcoming smile.
Isabella offers a polite greeting, while the emperor expresses his delight at hearing about her recent achievements.
A sudden ah sounds as the conversation turns toward the sensitive matter of a past lake incident. A sudden eek sounds as Callahan protests the topic while the emperor teases him for being overly nosy.
The narrative notes that the current situation has become far more interesting following the emperor's comments.
An intense, golden-eyed gaze narrows as someone closely observes the interaction between the emperor and the duke.
Isabella's hands tremble as she wonders why the emperor is choosing to bring up the past rejection now. A large white snake coils as the emperor questions Isabella's true thoughts regarding the closed case. A heavy thump sounds as Isabella bows her head in a tense moment of silence under the emperor's gaze.
Isabella's mind races as she struggles to find a safe and appropriate way to answer the probing question. The emperor's questioning intensity remains high as he waits for Isabella to break her silence. The blonde girl remains frozen in distress as the weight of the investigation topic hangs over her.
The emperor observes Isabella's reaction with a thoughtful and assessing expression, hand to his face.
The emperor acknowledges that his actions may have caused discomfort, but insists the truth was bound to be revealed.
Isabella looks up with a resolute and determined expression as she finds the courage to speak.
The emperor is intrigued by the fire in the girl's eyes, realizing her resolve goes far beyond simple stubbornness.
The emperor suddenly notes the time and prepares to bring the meeting to a close. The gray-haired man bids them farewell while Isabella responds with a polite and respectful confirmation.
Isabella sighs with deep relief after surviving the intense and unexpected encounter with the emperor.
Callahan praises Isabella's performance with a quiet word and a reassuring hand on her shoulder.
Isabella looks up with concern, worrying that her presence might negatively affect the emperor's opinion of the duke.
Callahan finds the girl's statement regarding his reputation to be quite unusual.
The duke reminds Isabella of her own words about wanting to live a righteous life.
Isabella reacts with a look of wide-eyed and utter shock.
Callahan reassures a nervous Isabella that the emperor likely didn't share her fears while the gray-haired man laughs at the size of the crowd.
A series of rhythmic claps sound as the duke explains that since his poor relationship with Rosamund is well known, there was no reason to blame Isabella for Herbert's absence.
Isabella seeks confirmation of his words while Callahan confidently affirms her realization.
A soft ha-ha sounds as the emperor cheerfully announces the official start of the tea party.
Delicate pastries and tea await the imperial guests on ornate tiered trays.
Young noblewomen from prestigious families gather to begin their social interactions.
A purple-haired girl in a red dress arrives with a boisterous laugh, declaring herself the most outstanding guest present.
Noblewomen whisper in admiration over Lady Oris's newly tailored and adorable dress.
Oris beams with pride as she shows off her elaborate and ruffled red outfit.
Oris thanks her peers while secretly gloating that her constant whining to her mother finally earned her the expensive outfit.
Oris' dreams of being the star are interrupted by a sudden call for the arrival of Lady Schweitzen. Enraged, a fuming Oris wonders who would dare steal her spotlight.
Guests swarm Isabella and praise her cuteness while a fuming Oris watches with gritted teeth from the sidelines. Oris's attention is caught by a sudden and familiar glimmer from Isabella's jewelry. A brilliant blue teardrop-shaped jewel rests elegantly on Isabella's chest.
A sudden gasp sounds as Oris shrieks in disbelief at the sight of the fabled mermaid's tear.
Isabella realizes that the sudden, intense interest in her is entirely due to the presence of the legendary jewel.
Isabella recalls Callahan's plan to open the family's secret vault containing long-hidden treasures and evidence.
A sudden gasp sounds as Isabella remembers selecting the tear of the mermaid because it appeared to be the least dangerous item in the vault.
Narrative text explains the origin of the gem, formed from a mermaid's tear shed for an injured village child during Callahan's first mission.
A mermaid carries a child through the depths, a legendary scene that sparked endless rumors and theft attempts among the nobility.
A soft sigh sounds as Oris is moved to tears by the romantic history of the jewel, while Isabella reflects on her simple reasons for choosing it.
Isabella fondly remembers finding the jewel cool because it represented a significant moment from Callahan's past. Oris expresses her intense envy that the Duke would allow Isabella to wear such a legendary and valuable piece. Isabella spots a solitary blonde-haired girl sitting alone in the corner of the room. The quiet girl with green eyes sips her tea in isolation, surrounded by floral decorations.
Isabella approaches the stranger and politely compliments the wonderful scent of her tea.
Isabella leans in with enthusiastic interest toward the startled girl.
Startled by the sudden attention, the shy girl struggles to find her words.
Isabella is completely won over by the girl's shy and adorable demeanor.
Oris interrupts to warn Isabella against speaking to Lady Remper, a name that sounds vaguely familiar to the girl. Oris snidely remarks that a mere baron's daughter is unsuitable company for the future Duchess of Barmouth.
Oris and her companions laugh mockingly while suggesting that Isabella should befriend socialites of her own rank instead.
Isabella is struck by the cruelty of the noble's snide laughter. Lady Remper's face flushes with deep shame as she listens to the public insults.
Overwhelmed by the humiliation, the blonde girl hides her face in her hands.
Isabella feels a familiar, suffocating atmosphere of social hierarchy and cruelty she had hoped to avoid. Clenching her fist, Isabella wonders why people are so obsessed with ranking others based on their status.
To disrupt the tension, Isabella points and lets out a frantic scream about a giant bee.
The suggestion of a palace insect causes the gathered noblewomen to panic in confusion.
A terrified Oris begins to shiver and flinch while Isabella watches her panicked reaction.
A quick twitch sounds as Isabella reveals to herself that the bee was merely a clever lie.
Oris flees the scene in a crying fit while calling out for her mother in total distress.
A sudden crash sounds as chaos erupts, with the group scrambling to leave and dresses being stepped on in the frantic retreat.
A loud slam sounds as the room is suddenly vacated by the panicked and fleeing nobles. Isabella is left alone with a smug and satisfied expression.
Looking toward the crying Lady Remper, Isabella begins to feel a slight pang of guilt for her chaotic methods.
A thought bubble notes that Oris has never felt such terror.
Isabella laughs heartily with a cheerful expression. The blonde-haired girl realizes she neglected to introduce herself properly.
The green-eyed girl introduces herself as Lisi Thea Remper.
Isabella is visibly shocked to hear the girl's full name. Narrative text identifies the girl as a legendary negotiator from Isabella's past life.
Lisi looks downward with a shy and nervous expression.
A colorful transition page displays various manga-style illustrations and credits.
Narrative text explains that undefeated Lisi was a legendary figure from a past life. A flashback shows Lisi's prowess in selling a rotten apple to a merchant. Lisi successfully reclaims a stolen mining right from a fuming noble.
A scenic stone bridge stands under a clear blue sky. Text emphasizes that Lisi could accomplish anything through the power of her words.
Isabella wonders if this is a golden opportunity to gain a powerful ally.
Lisi looks up and offers a quiet word of thanks for Isabella's help earlier.
Isabella is flustered and finds the blonde girl to be incredibly sweet. Isabella urgently insists that Lisi's humble self-assessment is not true at all. Lisi observes Isabella with a gentle and appreciative gaze.
Isabella formally introduces herself as Isabella Schweitzer. Lisi shyly asks Isabella if they could become friends.
Isabella is momentarily stunned as Lisi worries if her request was too forward. Isabella beams with a joyful smile while calling Lisi by her name.
Lisi breaks into a wide, teary-eyed smile of pure happiness.
Isabella expresses her surprise over the bee. Isabella asks Lisi if she'd truly traveled to the capital all by herself. Lisi quietly confirms the impressive feat of her solo journey.
A woman with her back turned commends Lisi for her bravery in coming alone.
Lisi admits she couldn't say no while Isabella continues to praise her.
Narrative text remarks on how natural Isabella seems in her high society surroundings.
Isabella blushes while mentioning that the Duke personally selected her outfit.
Both girls are startled by the sudden presence of a newcomer.
An unseen speaker apologizes for interrupting and notes that formal tea time has concluded.
A blonde-haired boy informs them that the guests are gathering in the hall. Lisi stands up and invites Isabella to head to the hall together. Rhythmic footsteps sound as Isabella follows behind while telling Lisi to slow down. Looking back, Isabella finds the blonde boy to be strangely familiar.
The shadowed figure of the blonde boy stands watching them from afar. Yuta runs toward Isabella while calling her name Monley.
A worried Yuta asks Isabella where she's been. Isabella happily introduces Lizzie as her new friend. Isabella introduces Lady Lissy to Lord Yuta Barman.
An awkward silence falls as Yuta and Lisi exchange formal greetings.
Isabella is taken aback by a cruel comment about falsely accusing Rosamund.
A reddish-brown-haired boy points and mocks Isabella for networking. Isabella identifies the newcomers as the lackeys of someone named Heiner.
Lisi and Yuta look on with expressions of deep discomfort and distress.
A series of snickers sound as the boys mock Isabella's reaction.
A sudden burst of heat sounds as Isabella is consumed by a burning rage.
Isabella's fist trembles as she suppresses her rising anger. Isabella prepares to speak, dismissing her attackers as insignificant.
The two boys react in total shock. Yuta reflects on his family's duty to protect the weak and uphold justice as Isabella watches.
He internally declares that cowards who strike from the shadows have no right to insult them.
Isabella stands with a firm and determined expression.
The blonde boy in the red vest grits his teeth and demands an apology right now.
A hand reaches toward Isabella while Yuta watches with a shadowed and ominous gaze.
A sharp kaya sounding as the blonde boy suddenly pulls Isabella's hair.
Yuta's eye glows with intense fury as he witnesses the attack.
The boy mocks Isabella, claiming a mere baron's daughter should know her place before speaking.
He suggests she beg Lord Heiner for forgiveness as a sudden, quick grab sounding takes him by surprise. The heavy crash sounding as Yuta slams the blonde boy's head onto the floor with immense force.
Yuta coldly asks where the boy thinks he is putting his filthy hand.
Yuta commands the boy to stand up and apologize to Isabella while the girls watch in disbelief.
Isabella is stunned to realize the boy has actually fainted from the impact.
Remembering Yuta's usual cheerful smile, Isabella realizes she was completely and utterly wrong about him.
Yuta stands over the unconscious boy with a silent and cold gaze.
Isabella reflects that she has never seen Yuta act this way before. Though she feels she should try to stop him, Isabella remains paralyzed by the intensity. A low buzz of murmurs, sounding as guests wonder about the loud noise and if something happened. The blonde boy sits up and calls Yuta a mad dog while clutching a head. He panics at the thought that his nose might be bleeding. A sudden pow sounding as a brown-haired woman rushes to William's side, ignoring his claims of being fine to fret over his bleeding nose while Yuta watches. William tries to tell his mother to stop and that he is fine.
A heavy stomp sounding as the man demands to know who hit his son while Isabella pleads for help as Callahan approaches.
William flinches in fear as he recognizes the formidable Duke Barmouth standing before him. Pointing an accusing finger, the woman claims Lord Barmouth committed an act of violence for no reason.
She questions his actions at the palace and accuses the Barmouths of abusing their power.
Murmurs continue about the shame of such behavior from a family meant to guard the empire. A loud exclamation rings out to deny the false claims. Lissy clenches her dress and trembles as she prepares to speak up.
Lissy bravely states that Lord William was the first to be rude to Lady Isabella and that Yuta responded to his actions.
Isabella is deeply touched by Rissy's support. A loud shout sounding as the brown-haired woman points at Lissy, demanding to know who she is to interfere when her son has been injured.
Isabella steps forward to defend Lissy, calling the woman rude and asking if they all need a witness.
A quick TMP sounding as the woman is startled by the arrival of a blonde-haired guest. The blonde-haired boy in the white suit smiles, stating his sense of duty as a gentleman prevents him from ignoring the situation. Isabella is shocked to identify him as Nathaniel Helbart from the family that manages the central bank. Isabella wonders why someone she barely knows is choosing to help them. A soft wink sounding as Nathaniel gestures toward the group.
Isabella realizes Nathaniel is stepping in because he has taken an interest in Rissy.
A cold, frozen sounding as the Emperor notes there were multiple witnesses, leaving the brown-haired woman paralyzed with fear as Callahan watches. A close-up reveals Callahan's intense and glowing red eye.
Isabella looks on with a nervous and sweating expression.
A chilling question asks which hand was responsible. A heavy thud sounding as Callahan towers over the boy, who flinches and asks for pardon. The voice asks which hand was used to ruin his daughter-in-law's hair like that. A terrified eek sounding as William and his mother tremble before the Duke's dark and looming presence. A soft hoo-hoo sounding as the Emperor puts a hand on Callahan's shoulder, suggesting they let this matter slide. The Emperor's gaze sharpens as he reminds Callahan of the reason the family was invited today. He concludes that it would not be a good look to make a scene, leaving Callahan in silent contemplation. Clapping his hands together, the Emperor notes the incident between the young lords and ladies, remarking that it brings him joy to see such hearty exchanges between the sprouts who will lead the empire's future. As a rhythmic rattle sounding echoes from the moving carriage, both Yuta and Isabella sit in a state of stunned, shadowed silence. The carriage continues its journey with a steady, rhythmic rattle sounding. Blushing intensely while looking down, Yuta quietly acknowledges his father. Resting his chin on his hands, Callahan tells Yuta that he applauds him for standing up for Isabella. A hazy memory shows Yuta slamming the boy's head onto the floor, as Callahan notes that there was certainly a better way to handle the situation. Callahan continues, stating that while the Emperor was gracious enough to let it slide, he will not, and asks Yuta if he understands the consequences. Sitting stiffly in the carriage, Yuta solemnly confirms his understanding to his father. A sudden, dramatic do-done sounding highlights Isabella's comical shock as she internally screams that the punishment is far too long. Yuta leans in close to a startled Isabella with a face red from embarrassment. A sharp hup sounding escapes Isabella as Callahan tells her there is no need to try and comfort the boy. A soft, quick TK sounding occurs as a sweating and blushing Yuta remains silent while Isabella looks on with a nervous expression. With a final rattle sounding, the carriage arrives at the Grand Barmouth estate under a starry night sky as Callahan announces they are home. Rhythmic, tump-sounding footsteps lead the group inside where Harold, the butler, welcomes them back. Callahan sternly orders Harold to ensure Yuta does not leave the grounds for an entire month, leaving the butler in total shock. As Yuta breathes heavily with a blushing face, Callahan commands him to act accordingly while the boy thinks of Isabella's name.
Isabella pauses in the hallway with a worried expression as a sudden stumble sounding draws her attention back to Yuta.
Seen through the reflection of an eye, a sudden flop sounding marks the moment Yuta collapses.
Harold is panicked and rushes toward the falling boy, while Isabella looks on with wide-eyed shock. Yuta falls to his knees and clutches Isabella's hands, while Harold and Isabella both cry out his name in alarm. Yuta's face is flushed with a high fever as he struggles to stay conscious.
Under a bright full moon, the narrative describes the frantic efforts to help Yuta, calling for warm water and noting that everything possible has been done.
In a dimly lit room, a man with a frustrated shake sounding, the man laments that Callahan has tightened security and that Isabella's engagement has become public knowledge.
A hooded figure standing by the window tells the man to calm down, asking if he will let a little incident ruin his long-awaited plans. The hooded figure offers a sinister smile, suggesting that if they cannot have the girl, they should simply take away the rat grund instead.
The man with the mustache is visibly shaken as the hooded figure asks him to share some of his fogstones. Under the night sky, the man hesitates about the fogstones, but the hooded figure insists they are not asking for much. Reaching out a gloved hand, the hooded figure declares that this is all for the sake of the one.
A young dark-haired boy wanders through a dark void, wondering if he hears someone crying.
He finds the shadowed figure of a man standing over a kneeling, weeping woman. A purple-haired woman sobs uncontrollably into her hands.
Trembling as he tugs on the man's coat, the young boy asks his father why he is just standing there instead of helping his mother.
A sudden, tight clench sounding occurs as the boy grips the fabric with all his might.
A sharp sliding circ sounding follows as the boy continues to pull on the coat in desperation. The man suddenly vanishes into a shower of light, leaving the boy reaching out for his father in confusion.
The boy turns his head, calling out for his mother as he is left alone in the darkness. The young boy stands devastated and weeping in the empty void.
A soft teak sounding accompanies a comforting hand reaching out to pet the crying boy's head as he hears a voice call his name.
Yuta wakes up in bed and is startled to find Isabella checking his forehead for a fever.
Blushing, Isabella offers a sheepish explanation for her presence.
Yuta stares up at her with a dazed and blushing expression.
Leaning in close, Isabella asks Yuta if he is now scared of her.
A sudden, loud, startled sounding rings out as Isabella frantically waves her hands, insisting she isn't scared of him at all.
Narrative text notes that Yuta's father once taught him that those who cannot control their behavior are no better than animals.
Looking out at the peaceful night, Isabella tells Yuta not to say such harsh things about himself. Isabella explains that he didn't act without reason and that she was actually relieved when he defended her.
Yuta offers a quiet word of thanks, looking touched by her kindness.
Isabella admits that while she was scared for a moment, she doesn't dislike him, causing Yuta to apologize while clutching his blanket.
A sudden wave of goosebumps sounding overcomes Isabella as she remembers how he smiled after the violent fight, while a cheerful Yuta tries to explain his perspective.
Yuta asks Isabella if he should cry or maintain a straight face during their next encounter.
A playful boing sounding emphasizes Isabella's complete bewilderment at Yuta's strange line of questioning.
Imagining Yuta as a pitiful, abandoned puppy, Isabella wonders if her moral guidance is leading them astray. Isabella feels that teaching the boy proper behavior is far more difficult than she initially expected.
A quick poke sounding punctuates Isabella's lesson that strength should only be used to protect the weak.
Isabella kindly advises Yuta to resolve conflicts without relying on physical force whenever it is possible.
Isabella firmly concludes her moral lesson by declaring that violence is never the correct solution.
Recalling their first meeting, Isabella promises to grow stronger so she can protect Yuta in return.
Yuta tentatively reaches out, asking if Isabella will truly stay by his side forever.
With a bright smile, Isabella makes a pinky promise to always remain with him despite any future challenges. Overwhelmed by Isabella's sincere promise, Yuta breaks into tears of relief as he clutches his blanket. A few days pass in the bustling capital as the scene shifts to a bright city street.
Isabella turns around when she hears someone calling out to her from behind. Rissy rushes toward Isabella with an apology for being late to their meeting.
Isabella reassures her friend, though she secretly feels guilty about using the outing for her own hidden agenda. Reflecting on a sealed letter, Isabella notes Nathaniel's claim of wanting to become closer to her and Yuta. Knowing Nathaniel's true goal is Rissy, Isabella decides to befriend him to secure her future inheritance. The dark-haired Duke Callahan suddenly asks what is taking Isabella so long to finish her conversation. A sudden, heavy noise sounding marks the surprise as Callahan towers over the girls, leaving Rissy in awe. A sudden clinch sounding occurs as Callahan stares intensely at Rissy, questioning her identity. A series of repeated movements accompanies Isabella as she frantically tries to usher the Duke away while apologizing to Rissy. A series of bows from a shopkeeper welcome the formidable Duke into his high-end boutique. Callahan sits with a powerful posture as Isabella reflects on his mad dog reputation while asking for dress-picking help. A sharp snap sounding and a quick foosh sounding underscore Callahan's orders for elegant, practical tea party attire.
Isabella and Rissy try on their new dresses, which Callahan deems satisfactory with a simple nod.
A rhythmic shk and chk sounding accompanies Callahan as he coolly points out numerous other dresses to purchase. A bright jingle sounding rings out as they leave, with Rissy amazed by the Duke's shopping efficiency.
Callahan asks if anything else is needed as a carriage is filled with countless shopping boxes.
Isabella feels disappointed that their shopping trip is ending so soon, until she notices Callahan checking his watch.
A sudden gulp sounding marks Isabella's excitement as she realizes they have arrived at a luxurious cafe.
A lively chatter sounding fills the air of the Empire's most popular cafe, where the group takes their seats.
Isabella is stunned to see the stern Callahan enjoying a sip sounding of tea in such a whimsical place.
Offering a subtle smile, Callahan admits that the experience of visiting the cafe is not bad.
A brief memory shows Yuta feverish in bed, desperately wanting to join Isabella on her outing.
Several beautifully decorated cakes are laid out on the table, ready to be enjoyed.
A blissful, melting sounding sensation overcomes Isabella as she tastes the high-quality desserts.
Callahan gently wipes Isabella's face with a napkin, advising her to chew slowly while Rissy watches with a smile.
A soft smile sounding escapes Rissy as she observes the unexpectedly tender interaction between the Duke and Isabella.
A sudden flush sounding overcomes Isabella as the Duke offers to hire the chef as their private employee. The day of the highly anticipated tea party finally arrives under a bright and clear sky.
Isabella, Rissy, and Yuta arrive at the grand venue, looking sharp in their formal outfits.
A soft wow sounding escapes Isabella as she marvels at the majestic setting of the event. Nathaniel and his family welcome their guests, warmly inviting them to make themselves comfortable. Narrative text details the Helbard family's prestigious history as owners of the Empire's safest central bank.
Isabella recalls her past life when Herbert unsuccessfully tried to force open her inheritance safe at the bank.
She remembers how the bank officials strictly adhered to the contract, refusing entry until she became an adult. A loud bam sounding concludes the memory of the bank door being shut in her greedy relative's face.
Isabella reflects on how different the adamant bank official seems now in the person of the friendly Nathaniel.
A close-up reveals Nathaniel offering a polite and charming smile to his newly arrived guests.
Isabella is startled as a teary Yuta looks on with confusion during the start of the party. Nathaniel approaches the group and specifically addresses Rissy with a polite greeting.
Offering his hand with a charming smile, Nathaniel makes a bold move toward Rissy.
Rissy looks surprised and glances toward Isabella, unsure of how to respond to the sudden attention.
Nathaniel suggests that since Isabella already has her fiancé as an escort, he should be the one to accompany Rissy. A sudden shift sounding occurs as Rissy tentatively places her hand in his while thanking Lord Helbard for the offer.
A rhythmic drip sounding accompanies a tearful Yuta as he stares at Nathaniel with an intense inner vow of grudge.
Isabella is horrified as she imagines a fox carrying off a helpless squirrel, lamenting that her friend has been caught. A deep growl sounding escapes the fuming Isabella and Yuta while Nathaniel prepares to formally introduce himself at the table. Nathaniel identifies himself and mentions his role in assisting his father and brother with the family bank. Sitting comfortably at the tea table, Nathaniel maintains his polite and friendly demeanor. He casually mentions his intention to pursue a different career path in the near future.
Isabella is utterly shocked by his revelation, panicking because she needs his help to access her inheritance.
Nathaniel looks slightly sheepish as he continues to speak with a modest expression. Nathaniel lets out a soft chuckle, observing that Isabella is quite transparent with her feelings.
A close-up of Nathaniel's eye reveals a flicker of a more serious or contemplative thought. A hazy memory shows a young boy reaching out toward a brilliant light.
The flashback continues with a young boy kneeling before an older man who stands with a king. A rushing water sounding accompanies a boat on the sea as Nathaniel describes his desire to find his own way.
A sharp screech sounding from gulls fills the air as Nathaniel explains that his brother will inherit the family business anyway.
Isabella stares at him in silence, surprised to learn about this ambitious and independent side of him. She wonders why Nathaniel chose to stay at the bank in her past life if his true dream was so different. Text on the screen notes that the tea and various desserts served at the party were exceptional. The narrative continues by describing the delightful nature of the social interactions at the event. Seen from above, the group enjoys a lavish spread of cakes and pastries at the long table. Nathaniel remains focused on Rissy, continuing to engage her in conversation over tea. Nathaniel offers a playful wink to the blonde girl, causing a celebratory star to appear. A sharp hiss sounding escapes Isabella as she tries to protect her friend, while Nathaniel simply laughs at the reaction. The narrative notes that Yuta is being unusually talkative and cheerful during the social gathering.
Rissy covers her mouth and giggles, clearly enjoying the lively atmosphere of the party. Isabella breaks into a genuine, bright laugh as she finally relaxes and enjoys herself. Nathaniel suddenly asks Isabella if she recalls having a safe at the central bank. Isabella confirms the inheritance from her parents, but admits she has never seen what is kept inside. Nathaniel finds her lack of knowledge suspicious, resting his chin on his hand as he thinks. Isabella reflects on her reasonable suspicion that Herbert was responsible for intercepting her bank notifications. Nathaniel offers a sudden and exciting invitation for her to visit the bank immediately.
A quick whoosh sounding underscores Isabella's excitement as she stands up and eagerly accepts the proposal.
Nathaniel reassures her that as the owner, she has every right to see the contents of the vault. He explains that confirming the items in a safe is a standard procedure everyone performs. A bright twinkle sounding accompanies Isabella's joyous agreement as she imagines finally seeing her inheritance. A low vroom sounding occurs as a finger touches a glowing purple magical seal. A dark archway is revealed, creating a looming sensation as the vault begins to open. A text bubble confirms the successful completion of the security ritual. The number 71 glows brightly, marking the location of the specific safe they were seeking. Isabella is awestruck by the sheer scale of the central bank's underground vault area as they walk inside. Narrative text explains that the bank's proximity to the estate allowed for a very quick arrival. A stylized map illustrates the short and direct path from the Halbard estate to the bank. Arriving at Safe 71, Isabella is momentarily intimidated by the massive facility and the potential for theft. A sharp clatter sounding from the guard's armor punctuates Nathaniel's reassurance that the security is impenetrable. A heavy creak sounding echoes through the hall as a decorative metal gate is pulled open. A sudden gulp sounding marks Isabella's nerves as Nathaniel gestures toward the final entrance of the vault. Isabella stares in wonder as she is told that the vault before her belongs to her. The warm light illuminates a massive dragon skeleton displayed prominently within the grand hall. Yuta is amazed by the sheer number of incredible artifacts housed within Isabella's collection. Ristea and Yuta watch with concern as Isabella suddenly covers her face in embarrassment. Overwhelmed by emotion, a tearful Isabella admits she is sorry for taking so long. A warm memory surfaces of a loving couple caring for a young girl in pink. Schmidt-Kallman presents Isabella with a detailed list compiled by the librarian for her review. The blonde knight appears slightly uneasy while beginning to explain a particular item. Isabella forces a smile despite her face being comically swollen from her earlier emotional outburst. She focused her attention on the list, searching intently for any mention of the name Radgrund. A startling realization hits as the document identifies item number 353 as Radgrund's crown, listed as unidentified. Risthea and Yuta look on with wide-eyed curiosity at the mystery surrounding the artifact. Schmidt notes that Isabella seems to be looking for the specific crown mentioned in the records. He explains that since it lacked information, he researched the legendary history behind the crown. The scene transitions as a tale from a long time ago begins to unfold. A young, ambitious king is depicted receiving the golden crown as a gift from a conquered nation. Upon wearing the crown, the king gained eternal life but became eternally frozen in his throne. Yuta finds it hard to believe such a powerful treasure wouldn't be world famous if the legend were true. Schmidt explains that the gift was a curse as it did not grant a true life. The king entered a permanent vegetative state, attended by silent figures in white robes and masks. Isabella is horrified to learn that the king remained frozen without ever waking or aging. When a subject finally removed the crown, the king instantly aged and crumbled into death. The group shivers in the cold atmosphere of the museum while Schmidt clarifies that it's just a legend. A soft cirque sounding follows the appearance of mysterious dust as Schmidt offers to escort Risthea home. A sudden, heavy dun sounding underscores Isabella's shock as she realizes something is terribly wrong. She identifies a faint, shimmering trail on the wall as a distinct trace of dark magic. Isabella turns her head with a quick fwick sounding as she traces the origin of the magical dust. A bright flash marks the spot where she discovers the source of the dark energy. Nearby, a guard in a red uniform lets out a tired yawn, completely oblivious to the danger. With a forceful pow sounding, Isabella rushes past the startled guard to investigate further. She discovers strange purple glowing symbols and realizes she has seen this script once before. Isabella mumbles to herself, trying to decipher the letters while confirming a dark magician was present. The blonde-haired girl realizes that the intruder was specifically targeting the area in front of her safe. Yuta looks startled as he calls out to his lord while the girl prepares her report. Isabella decides they must head back home immediately to report her findings to the dupe. A loud bam sounding echoes as Isabella protests the unfairness of being ignored by Callahan. A series of rhythmic bam sounding punctuates Callahan's busy work as he tells Isabella he cannot speak now. He dismisses her with a swift schwook sounding, promising they can discuss things at a later time.
A sharp tick sounding marks Isabella placing a jar on his desk, insisting this matter is different.
Inside the glass jar, a concentrated cloud of purple dark dust swirls ominously. Isabella recalls seeing a man named Herbert writing those same magical letters in her previous life.
She clenches her fist nervously, unsure of how to explain the source of her knowledge to him.
Isabella is taken aback by a sudden realization as she looks toward the desk. She is stunned that Callaghan is already examining a sample of the dark trace himself.
Callahan looks at her calmly, explaining that he has spent many years actively fighting dark magicians.
A light tap sounding follows as Callaghan touches the jar and asks for the exact location where she found it.
Dark dust is described as an impure particle left behind whenever a dark magician uses their power.
It is explained that a highly skilled and powerful dark magician will leave behind only very small particles. Conversely, a less proficient magician leaves behind much larger, more noticeable traces of their magic.
Isabella watches him with suspicion, realizing Callahan knows facts that shouldn't be discovered for several more years.
A floating thought bubble wonders exactly how much information the man possesses. The black-haired man questions how the girl obtained her information. The man suggests delaying the departure until the next morning.
A sudden thunderous bang sounding echoes as the girl slams the table in protest.
The dark-haired man demands a clarification while the girl tries to find her words.
She explains finding a jar of swirling purple particles at her bank vault.
He asks why she hesitated to speak, leaving the girl feeling comically blamed. A focused scribble sounding follows as he notes that her inheritance has attracted dangerous enemies.
The girl asks for clarification while the man identifies the object as the Radgren's crown. A low creak sounding fills the room as he explains the involvement of dark magicians.
He orders his servant to notify the night divisions of the situation immediately. The man decides they must depart for the bank right away. The blonde girl is shocked by the sudden departure while the man remains unfazed.
She privately admits she was only asking just in case. He confirms their bank destination as the girl celebrates her internal success.
A gentle rub sounding occurs as a gloved hand inspects glowing magical symbols.
The group arrives at the bank to survey the scene of the intrusion. A tearful blonde man laments the dishonor brought upon his ancestral family.
He lets out a loud wah sounding while decrying the involvement of dark magic.
The dark-haired man orders a formal report to be sent to the knights.
He explains that the presence of a dark magician grants them full investigative authority. Capital incidents typically fall under a specific night division's jurisdiction.
However, cases involving dark magic require jurisdictional rights to be handed over.
The man consults his pocket watch while anticipating the arrival of specialized knights.
Yuta and Isabella discuss the person they expect to be a nuisance.
A heavy stomp sounding follows a massive armored man approaching the group. A sharp whoosh sounding carries an angry shout directed at Callaghan. Both children are visibly startled by the sudden, booming noise.
A quick huff sounding marks the arrival of the exhausted gray-haired man.
Isabella identifies the newcomer as the person she was just discussing. The gray-haired man is revealed as Freddie Akeem, the chief of a night division.
Akeem angrily questions the document he received while Callahan calmly calls it cooperation.
A loud pow sounding occurs as Akeem slaps the letter in frustration.
Earlier, a guard had interrupted Akeem with news of the bank intrusion.
Akeem reflects on his division's jurisdiction over the bank property.
He accuses the dark-haired man of stealing his investigative rights. A fierce glare sounding accompanies Akeem's realization that Callahan claimed the case in writing.
Akeem points to his hair, blaming the man for his premature aging. A flashback reveals that Akeem once possessed healthy black hair.
A sudden grab, Akeem seizing his rival's collar to demand certainty.
The black-haired man maintains his calm while asserting his confidence in the lead.
He insists that the discovery of dark magic traces solidifies his jurisdiction. Isabella pleads for peace while the chief argues that no actual intrusion has happened.
A light roll sounding captures a glowing blue crystal moving across the floor.
The arguing men are suddenly silenced by a mutual sense of alarm.
A powerful foosh-sounding explosion of purple energy erupts in the hallway.
A wet squirm sounding follows the appearance of shadowy monsters as the man explains they are magical residues, ordering the night chief to protect the young boy while the creatures insult the group's presence. A cry of total confusion echoes through the room as everyone struggles to understand the chaotic events. A final portrait shows the dark-haired man standing beside the blonde girl.
Isabella asks Callahan about the blue squirmandess.
Blue, shadowy creatures squirm on the floor.
The blonde girl realizes this is dark magic.
Callahan asks if Isabella is scared, and she tearfully apologizes. A sudden energy burst sounding occurs among him.
He tells her to remember this fear so she won't be scared when facing them again, advising her to run or fight next time.
Yuta looks on with a shocked expression.
Callaghan orders the group into battle, provoking Akeem's angry retort that he isn't his superior.
The blue shadows continue their eerie squirming.
A powerful whoosh-sounding explosion of light erupts. Energy ripples outward across the tiled floor. Yuta braces himself with a determined look.
Someone realizes the intruders are targeting the child first.
Akeem shouts in defiance while slashing a monster.
A glowing strike cuts through a blue creature.
Callahan protectively holds Isabella while drawing his sword. He explains these monsters are distractions, which the Night Chief acknowledges.
Two cloaked intruders run toward the safe.
Callahan tells Isabella to wait while he protects the safe.
The shadowy blue monsters surround the area.
Callahan reassures the girl as someone calls after her.
Belle arrives with a loud boom sounding, despite Akeem's protest to be quiet.
The black-haired man prepares to head off alone. A sudden grab sounding marks a hand catching his tilp.
Isabella begs to be taken along with him.
The knights warn her that it will be too dangerous. Isabella insists she is safest by the man's side and won't be any safer staying behind. Callahan pauses to consider the girl's request. He remained silent for a brief moment. He relents and tells her she leaves him no choice but to come along. He carries her while noting her gutsy nature, hoping she won't regret her choice. Isabella smiles and promises not to regret her choice. The man confirms his resolve with a quiet smile.
Rapid footsteps echo through the stone hallway.
They rush through the dark corridor together. Callaghan stops suddenly as a mysterious shadow appears. Isabella asks what the strange figure is.
He explains that dark magicians abduct citizens as tribute. Those who were taken are exposed to dark fog.
They lose their vitality and become filled with vob.
A pale puppet stumbles forward, having lost all self-control. The puppet's face is hollow with black eyes. Isabella is overcome by intense goosebumps and fear. She panics and grabs Callahan, who notes she is choking him. He explains it is trickier to fight these puppets than simple residue. The blonde girl asks if it's because they are people. The black-haired man flatly denies her assumption. He explains they are dangerous because they wield dark vod. A heavy foosh-sounding blast of dark energy is fired. A quick hup sounding follows as they dodge the attack. Callahan holds Isabella protectively as a surge of dark magical energy erupts. The black-haired man kicks away a pale, featureless humanoid puppet. Callahan's gloved hand firmly grips the hilt of a sword.
A sharp schluck sounding accompanies Callahan as he stabs the puppet through its chest.
Callahan stares down with a somber and focused expression. He offers an apology, noting this was the only way to help. A sudden flop sounding marks the creature falling as Callahan tells it to rest in peace. Isabella realizes the person they just faced was likely once an ordinary human. Callahan warns that dark magicians can create many such puppets every day. A soft shaw sounding follows as the remains of the puppet turn into dust. A firm clench sounding underscores Isabella's anger at the magician's lack of guilt. Isabella worries that she has become a burden to Callahan.
The young girl admits that the current situation is very scary.
A sudden schluck sounding occurs as a bright blue magical slash cuts through the air. Rissy demands that a reviving slime creature stop returning as a boy notes they need to find its creator. A knight urges the group to hold the fort while Yuta regrets letting Isabella go alone. A close-up reveals Yuta's serious and determined gaze. Yuta looks toward the distance while praying for Isabella's safety. Callahan and Isabella manage to catch up to a group of cloaked figures. Isabella observes the group and notes that they appear to be arguing. Two cloaked intruders discuss stealing valuable items from within the safe. The lead figure orders the group to move on while their puppets distract the guards. A cloaked man reacts with a look of pure, stuttering shock. A white-haired figure mocks the dark magicians for being unintelligent and easy to track. He scolds them for leaving traces that give away their location. The dark magicians are angered by the insult and tell their ally to watch his tongue. The figure reveals that Callahan is already nearby in the building. He mocks the mere humans while praising his own power over the dark fog. A quick sounding accompanies the figure using magic against his pleading allies. Callahan's red eye watches the internal conflict from a hidden vantage point. A sudden swoosh sounding marks the figure preparing a powerful dark orb. A massive boom sounding echoes as a huge explosion blasts through the building. One of the magicians lies defeated and unconscious on the ground. A heavy rattle sounding follows the collapsing stone wall nearby. Callahan has Isabella tucked safely and snugly beneath his heavy cloak. Isabella shivers at the realization that the enemy would attack their own side. Callahan notes that the intruder is exceptionally strong and dangerous. The white-haired villain laughs while Callahan identifies him as a powerful dark magician. A rhythmic thump sounding accompanies their stealthy movement along the wall. Callahan asks Isabella if she can see the enemies further down the hall. He points out the teleportation magic circle drawn on the back of their hands. Callahan explains that the enemies can use these circles to escape danger instantly. A tense do-done sounding underscores Callahan's blunt admission that there is nothing he can do. Isabella is comedically horrified as Callahan explains catching them before they teleport is impossible. Callahan mentions that there is still one way to handle the situation. Isabella's eyes widen as she has a sudden and profound realization. Isabella jokingly asks if her hidden powers are awakening, but Callahan chides her humor. She realizes that Callahan knows she carries an essential item at all times. A sharp click sounding marks the opening of a chest filled with valuables. A loud bam sounding punctuates Callahan's warning that they only have 5 minutes.
The silver-haired boy in the purple hood searches frantically through a vault filled with various hats, unable to locate the crown he was sent to retrieve.
He doesn't even know how the crown looks like.
The black-haired man watches the thief struggle with a cold, analytical expression. Callaghan instructs Isabella to stay back and fire the sleeping grenade to capture the intruder while she hesitates to respond.
The hooded boy trembles in the corner, terrified that a single misstep will turn him into one of the puppets he has seen before.
Callaghan remains silently focused on the operation. Isabella's blue eyes widen as she prepares to take action. A soft swishing sound follows Callahan's movements as he advises her to recognize her limits, yet acknowledges her choice to stand and fight.
Isabella recalls the weight of her decision to face the dangers ahead. A heavy haw sounding echoes her memory of training relentlessly with a wooden sword in the manor courtyard. She remembers the growing determination that has led her to this moment.
The man stands tall beside her, waiting for her final decision.
Callahan asks what she intends to do, warning that her inheritance will be stolen if the dark magician is left alone.
A sharp flinch sounding marks the girl clenching her fist as he asks if losing her property is truly what she wants. The man's red eyes focus on her as he observes that she came along specifically to protect her assets herself.
He bluntly states that without sufficient determination, she will never be able to protect anything on her own.
Tears well in Isabella's eyes as the harsh reality of her situation sinks in.
She declares her determination to protect what is precious to her, prompting Callahan to question if she can truly do it.
The young girl's hand trembles with resolve as she tightly grips her wooden slingshot.
Callaghan kneels behind her to steady her body, telling her to focus all her senses on aiming the shot.
Isabella closes one eye to aim, convincing herself there is absolutely nothing to be afraid of.
A sudden, powerful whoosh sounding follows as the girl launches a projectile toward the intruder.
A quick swoosh sounding marks the sleeping grenade flying toward the hooded boy just as he lifts the golden crown.
A swift swooshing sound accompanies the boy reaching out to catch the object, mocking the idea of being hit by such a slow attack. A sharp twuck sounding follows him catching the grenade, which immediately triggers a thunderous boom-sounding explosion of blue magic. The intruder loses consciousness as the magical effect takes hold, his head lolling as he wonders what just happened. Isabella observes the golden Radgrun's crown lying on the floor, noting its intricate design now that she can see it up close.
A light tick sounding marks her realization that Herbert and the dark magicians likely have a malicious plan for the artifact.
Callahan begins to walk away, acknowledging that the task wasn't easy and praising her for a job well done. The blonde girl beams with joy as the man confirms that she was the one who successfully protected the crown.
Sunlight hits the white towers of the capital city as a voice calls out to check if someone is listening.
A bold, dazed sounding hovers over the girl's wide, vacant blue eyes as she stares blankly into space. A sudden, sharp shwook sounding occurs as Callahan leans in close to wake her, startling a small hic sounding out of her. A rhythmic ba-thump sounding follows Isabella's racing heart as she apologizes, admitting she didn't expect a dark magician to be so young. A quiet zzz sounding drifts from the sleeping boy as Callahan identifies him as the powerful dark magician Elvio Salvati.
Callaghan laughs while looking at a portrait of the brothers, eager to see Cesare's reaction to Elvio's failed mission.
A man in town looks shocked as he hears the news of the bank robbery. A noblewoman hides her face behind a fan, expressing her total lack of trust in the central bank following the incident.
Rumors spread through the capital that the 9-year-old daughter-in-law of the Barmouth family was the one to catch the robber.
An older man with a gray beard strokes his chin thoughtfully as he hears the incredible news. The king finds the young girl's involvement in the bank incident to be as intriguing as her reputation suggests. A sudden chill brings a visible goosebump sounding to the girl's skin as she senses something unsettling. A frantic shake sounding accompanies Isabella's confusion over the sudden, overwhelming sense of dread she is experiencing. The maid, Magda, wraps a warm cloak around the shivering girl and offers her help with anything she might need. Isabella thanks her before asking for a specific, mysterious favor that takes the maid by surprise. The morning sun illuminates a collection of jars and bottles arranged on the manor's kitchen counter. Magda mentions that the kitchen staff can easily prepare whatever she needs, watching the girl work at the counter. Isabella stands on a small stool and insists on doing the baking herself, kneading dough with a face full of determination. The memory of the captured silver-haired dark magician remains as a faded image in the girl's mind. The night sky hangs over the castle as the narrative confirms that the knights successfully arrested Elvio and his group. Isabella looks down with an expression of intense focus. The kitchen staff watches with pride as the young girl works diligently on her baking. She pauses her work to reflect on how much the black-haired man has helped her lately.
Isabella enthusiastically tells Magda to begin their baking session.
Magda asks if she is ready, while the girl nervously admits it is her first time but hopes it won't be too difficult. Isabella reminds herself that she is being helped by a master of all household chores. She envisions the head maid as a magical weapon for the family, sparking her excitement.
Magda prepares to start as the girl thinks the maid will be a much kinder instructor than Callaghan.
An intense man lets out a sudden humph-sounding shout as he takes over the lesson.
He barks out rapid-fire baking instructions, leaving the girl shocked as he declares that the weak won't survive their household.
Isabella's eyes fill with determination as she vows to give the task her best effort. She begins melting the butter while the head maid watches her progress with a smile.
The young girl remains nervous but focused as she continues her work.
Magda watches her, reflecting on how much the girl has grown since they first met.
A memory shows the maid holding the young girl's hands, marveling at her growth.
Isabella pulls a tray from the oven and asks the maid for her opinion on the result.
A sudden dun-dun sounding shock freezes Magda as she looks at the baked goods.
The madeleines are burnt and smoking with a sizzle-sounding heat, making the girl worried they aren't good enough to be gifts.
Magda tastes one and insists they are delicious, suggesting they just need a bit of decoration.
Overjoyed, Isabella throws her arms around the maid in a warm, hug-sounding embrace.
Beaming with a radiant smile, the girl prepares to deliver her gift-wrapped boxes. She presents the treats to various members of the household staff.
The knights are delighted to receive their gifts from the young lady.
Isabella gives gifts to her family and Yuta, explaining she wants to thank everyone who has supported her. Callaghan looks at his gift as the girl humbly hopes he will enjoy the treats despite their imperfections. She expresses her sincere gratitude to everyone while acknowledging Magda's help in making the gifts. Isabella notices Yuta looking distressed and wonders what could be bothering him.
The boy is overcome with tears as he asks if he ended up scaring her.
Callaghan watches the scene, wondering if the bank incident or his harsh training caused her distress. The man asks what made her decide to leave and promises to try and make amends.
Isabella is struck with total confusion by the dramatic conclusion they have reached.
A strange creature stands by a river as the narrative explains there was a slight misunderstanding. The blonde girl bursts into joyful laughter, her confusion turning to amusement. She laughs and asks why she would ever leave, while the boys look on in shock and relief. The gifts are revealed to be madeleines decorated with charming, simple faces.
A messenger bird makes a quiet coo-sounding noise as it arrives at a window.
Herbert catches the bird and lets out a dark smirk as he reads the news it brought.
The king smiles warmly as he prepares to address his guests.
He welcomes the leaders of the 5 great houses to his summons.
Herbert acknowledges that it is only right for a subject to respond to the king's call.
A noblewoman hides behind her fan, curious about the important news the king has to share. The gray-bearded king looks out with a very serious and focused expression. He announces his plan to reward Lady Schweier with a high medal of honor for her bravery at the bank, shocking the nobles. Herbert breaks into a cold sweat as he realizes the prestige of the medal the king is offering. The king asks if anyone sees a problem with rewarding a 9-year-old for her extraordinary actions. An aristocrat fumes at the thought of the Barmouth family gaining even more influence through the girl's medal. The king praises her for catching dark magicians with an invention of her own. The nobles nod in false agreement while secretly resenting the idea of her receiving such a high honor.
Herbert shouts out to get the king's attention so he can voice his opposition.
He argues that the girl should be disciplined for possessing a dangerous weapon rather than being rewarded for her role in the capture. The black-haired man narrows his red eyes, noting that the Barmouth family's report wasn't entirely truthful. A deep frown emphasizes his serious expression. The mustached man, Herbert, glances toward the head of the table and suggests they investigate the matter more thoroughly. A hand raises with a sharp sk sounding as Chief Justice Matthias Caligula proposes holding a formal hearing. The black-haired man states that Isabella should be rewarded if the hearing proves she acted correctly. Herbert counters that she should be disciplined if it turns out she was in the wrong. The king rests his chin on his hand and accepts the Chief Justice's proposal.
Matthias Caligula notes the complaints from other nobles about traveling just for a 4th-class medal ceremony.
The gray-haired man turns back and asks Herbert what he has to say. A quick squeaking sound follows Herbert pulling out a letter, claiming there is something the Chief Justice should know. A grand hallway is filled with a constant chatter sounding as people gather for the event. Standing before a massive wooden door, the blonde girl wonders what she should do.
A frantic shake sounding accompanies Isabella's extreme nervousness while Gilbert and Yuta try to reassure her.
Gilbert jokingly promises to kidnap her if things go wrong, but the girl worries that would only make the situation worse. A large bird's beak clamps down on a fish as a narrative voice begins to describe Matthias Caligula. He is described as a theologian who prioritizes fairness and equity above all else. A white egret stands in the shallow water, holding a struggling fish in its long beak. Culligan warns Isabella that she will be meeting the man soon, leaving her shocked and confused as to why. The blonde girl looks up in surprise, wondering whose hearing is being held. The black-haired man tilts his head and explains that the hearing is specifically for her and her invention.
A text box explains that her invention, the sleep grenade, was given the nickname Shrenade by her friend Belle.
Isabella's stress levels skyrocket as she realizes Herbert is the one who pushed for the hearing.
The girl is stunned, wondering how Herbert could have possibly found out about the existence of the Shrenade.
A hand rests firmly on a stack of documents as a calm voice tells her there is nothing to fear.
A powerful whoosh-sounding energy radiates from Callahan as he darkly promises to make Herbert understand the consequences of his challenge.
A sudden, sharp flash sounding and a loud knock-knock sounding on the door startled the wide-eyed girl.
Gilbert informs Isabella that the hearing is ready for her, while Yuta wishes her good luck. A rhythmic tat-tat-tat sounding follows the girl's footsteps as she heads toward the courtroom.
Yuta watches her leave, asking Gilbert if they can really expect her to be okay given how nervous she looked.
Gilbert smiles confidently and says they have to trust her because there is nothing else they can do.
Yuta nods in agreement, deciding to sit tight and wait for the girl's return. A thunderous whack-whack sounding gavel strike echoes through the large courtroom. A heavy silent sounding falls over the room as Isabella stands before the high bench. An official announces that the proceedings are about to commence. Herbert and Callahan look on as the hearing for Miss Isabella Schweier officially begins. A deep dun sounding emphasizes the serious, focused expression of the Chief Justice.
Isabella takes a deep, who-sounding breath to steady herself before enthusiastically declaring her readiness.
The Chief Justice asks if she captured the magicians, and Isabella confirms it while giving credit to Duke Barmouth.
Matthias Caligula strokes his beard thoughtfully as the spectators erupt in a quiet chatter sounding.
The justice moves on to the topic of the weapon, asking the girl if she was the one who invented it.
A close-up shows the blonde girl's eye narrowing with focus as she prepares her explanation.
Isabella excitedly explains that she designed the Shrenade as a non-lethal tool that uses a sleep-inducing aroma to subdue enemies. Herbert sits at his table and begins to interject with a mockingly pleasant expression. A dark smirk sounding appears on the man's face as he internally mocks the girl for being foolish. A narrative bubble confirms that Matthias Caligula is indeed known as a just and honest man.
A golden scale of justice glows as the narration explains that he values law and order above all else.
The justice believes that dangerous tools should never be allowed to remain in the possession of a child. Isabella looks forward with an expression of stunned realization as the tension in the room rises. The girl argues that she built the device with minimal gunpowder and added safety features to prevent accidents.
The Chief Justice counters by stating that the real issue is how easily the weapon could be misused by the wrong people.
He argues that if a child can carry it, criminals could easily produce and use it without any regulations. Isabella clenches her dress, realizing the terrifying potential for her invention to be refined with lethal poison, while the debate over banning and destroying the Shrenade continues. A dark hand reaches toward a floating red Shrenade as the narrative warns of the danger if the device falls into the possession of those with ill intentions.
Isabella acknowledges that she never foresaw the weapon's potential for lethality, admitting she naively assumed she would be its only user.
A somber text bubble emphasizes that her original intentions for the device no longer hold weight in the face of its dangerous potential. The blonde girl's eyes fill with worry as she ponders the risks of keeping the blueprint secret and the potential danger it could bring to those around her. A solitary thought bubble questions if she is truly left with no choice but to destroy her own creation. The courtroom gallery is filled with a low chatter, sounding as the nobles focus their attention on the young girl.
A close-up of Herbert's face shows his smug confidence, with the narrative noting that he feels certain of his victory.
Isabella's resolve wavers as she expresses her deep reluctance to abandon a project that so many people worked hard to complete.
With a sudden, determined tight sounding, the girl clenches her fists and vows to find a way to prevent the mass production of her invention.
A sharp gasp sounding accompanies Isabella's wide-eyed realization as a brilliant solution suddenly comes to mind.
Matthias Caligula strokes his gray beard and observes that the young lady does not seem ready to give up her position. A bead of sweat rolls down the girl's face as she prepares to deliver her unexpected counterargument. Isabella enthusiastically proposes utilizing the Empire's patent system to legally restrict the production and distribution of the Shrenade. Herbert watches with a skeptical expression as the girl explains that imperial law could keep the weapon's technology from becoming public. A thunderous bang-sounding gavel strike punctuates Herbert's angry shout that the patent system is not intended for toys. Red-faced with rage, the mustached man argues that the black market cannot be regulated and demands the immediate confiscation of the device. A close-up focus on Herbert's narrowed eye reveals his intense malice and frustration with the girl's clever maneuvering. Herbert points his cane toward Callahan, questioning his competence as a guardian for allowing a child to deploy weapons in battle.
A flurry of whisper sounding fills the room as nobles gossip about the Duke's decision to involve his young daughter-in-law in such dangerous affairs.
The Chief Justice reminds Isabella that her presence in the Barmouth household is due to royal mercy, making the Duke responsible for her actions. Confusion flashes across Isabella's face as she wonders why the hearing has suddenly shifted into an attack on her family and guardianship. Matthias Caligula mutters thoughtfully, even considering if he should request the king to find a different marriage prospect for the girl.
The justice orders Herbert to stay on topic, but the mustached man lets out a dark smirk, sounding convinced he has finally cornered Callahan.
A red-tinted bubble questions if the legal standing would change if Isabella were considered something more than an ordinary child.
Herbert's face contorts with shock as the conversation takes a turn he clearly did not anticipate.
Standing tall, the black-haired man asks the court if the situation would be different if Isabella held a formal military rank.
Herbert dismisses the suggestion as utter nonsense, but Callahan remains calm as he prepares to reveal his hidden card.
Callahan stuns the room by declaring that Isabella is actually a knight in training, leaving the girl with a comically wide-mouthed expression of shock.
With a quick flap sounding, the man holds up a registration document featuring the girl's photo, causing a wave of disbelief to wash over the courtroom. Isabella panics internally as she realizes the man used her engagement photo for the knight registration and that the emperor has already approved it.
Herbert rages against the validity of the document, pointing his finger and shouting that there has never been a knight as young as 9.
The gallery erupts in a curious chatter, sounding about the unprecedented situation, while Callahan coolly replies that every tradition has a beginning. A succession of loud, whack-sounding gavel strikes demands immediate order and silence from the gathered nobles.
Matthias Caligula stands before the high bench and announces that he has heard sufficient evidence to reach a final verdict.
Isabella takes a nervous gulp, sounding as the justice acknowledges the inherent danger of the weapon and her young age. To Herbert's growing dismay, the Chief Justice agrees that the patent system could provide a viable way to regulate the device's usage. A close-up focus on the justice's face underscores the gravity of the decision he is about to deliver. Herbert slams his hands onto the desk in a frantic what sounding as he realizes his attempt to seize the girl's invention is failing.
Isabella looks up with wide, hopeful eyes as the Chief Justice praises her bravery and her role in protecting the empire from dark magicians. Matthias Caligula formally announces that Isabella Schweier will be honored with a 4th-class Medal of Honor for her extraordinary service. A simple text box marks the successful conclusion of the formal hearing and the girl's victory.
The heavy courtroom doors swing open with a powerful whoosh sounding as the participants begin to depart. Fuming with rage, Herbert stomps away through the palace halls with a rhythmic limp sounding as he curses his failure. The mustached man grinds his teeth in anger, blaming Callahan for once again interfering with his plans for the girl. Herbert rages against the Chief Justice, unable to believe that a man of his standing fell for what he considers a childish trick. A vision of the justice's earlier agreement with the noble's concerns appears, highlighting how effectively the girl managed to sway his opinion. Matthias Caligula watches Herbert's retreat, privately mocking the man's foolishness and asserting his own complete independence. Narrowing his eyes, the justice reflects that his only interest is identifying and monitoring those who might become a threat to the empire. Outside the courtroom, Isabella lets out a loud wail about how terrifying the experience was, while Gilbert and Yuta look on in stunned confusion at her sudden outburst. Gilbert praises Isabella for her performance and offers to help her clean up, while the girl expresses how overwhelming the Duke and the atmosphere were. A quiet night falls over the grand mansion of the Gottfried family. Deep in a cell at the end of the mansion, a silver-haired boy sits alone as a rat scuttles by with a quick shh sounding. A close-up shows the white rat letting out a sharp squeak sounding. A voice calls out to the boy, identifying him as Elvio. The silver-haired boy looks up in recognition, identifying the visitor as Cesare. Cesare promises to rescue Elvio soon, acknowledging the hardships the boy has faced. The rat curiously tilts its head as it listens to the promise of escape. Elvio jumps up in a sudden rage, startled by the rat's eek sounding as he vows to kill the Gottfrieds. The boy rants about his treatment in the dungeon, complaining that they feed him 3 times a day and punish him with tickling. Elvio bellows his status as a great dark magician, while Cesare is simply relieved to see the boy has so much energy. The silver-haired boy focuses his hatred on the blonde girl, blaming her for his capture. Grinding his teeth, Elvio vows to find her and tear her apart. Cesare reveals the girl's identity, confirming that she is the daughter of their enemies. The boy repeats his murderous oath as Cesare urges him to focus on escaping first. The long-haired man in white offers his hand to the boy sitting on the straw-covered floor.
Elvio takes his brother's hand, revealing a dark magical mark on Cesare's glove.
The scene shifts to the bright courtyard where Callahan addresses a large gathering of knights. A knight with glasses observes that the proceedings are moving faster than he had anticipated. Callahan formally announces his intention to appoint Isabella as a knight in training, sparking a wave of enthusiastic cheers.
The knights are frozen in silence as the Duke challenges anyone to object to his decision.
Isabella takes a nervous gulp, sounding as she wonders if such an appointment is truly allowed.
A red-haired knight gives the girl a powerful hug, welcoming her as a cute addition to their ranks. Another knight scolds the woman for being too intimidating toward the young girl. Eric and his companion offer their warm congratulations and promise to answer any questions the girl might have. A brown-haired woman with glasses expresses her hope that Isabella's arrival will put an end to her long nights of work. Isabella laughs bashfully, feeling overwhelmed by all the flattery from the knights. A sudden, heavy flop sounding echoes as a knight collapses on the floor. Sir Abraham falls to his knees in tears, leaving Isabella in a state of confused shock. The blonde knight lets out a loud wah sounding cry of pure elation. A festive banner welcomes Isabella as the MVP, while a knight celebrates with pom-poms and a celebratory cheer. Isabella smiles brightly and vows to live up to the prestige of the Barmouth name. The knights gather around, thinking to themselves how precious and cute their new recruit is. A close-up focus reveals the intense determination and clarity in the girl's blue eyes.
Isabella notices Yuta standing nearby and wonders what he is thinking.
A concerned thought bubble suggests she believes the boy is unhappy about her joining the order. To her surprise, Yuta gives her a warm smile and offers his sincere congratulations. The boy runs off to fetch the uniform they prepared for her, a task that Gilbert finds to be a good idea. Callaghan watches the boy's departure with a quiet, contemplative expression. The Duke pats Yuta's head and thanks him for his help, while Isabella watches from the background. The blonde girl watches as Yuta disappears into the distance.
Callaghan speaks the girl's full name, preparing to finalize the ceremony.
He asks if she pledges to be the sword of the Empire, and she delivers her resolute confirmation. Kneeling before the Duke's sword, Isabella accepts the weight of her new responsibility. The domestic staff and Yuta watch from the sidelines, their faces filled with pride for the young girl. Callaghan demands a pledge to protect the weak and uphold justice as a knight.
Isabella stays focused and calm as the golden hilt of the sword rests before her.
A close-up shows the girl delivering her final answer with unwavering conviction. The Duke formally declares her a knight in training of the Gottfried Order to a thunderous roar of approval. A group of knights rushes toward the girl with a fast-paced taka-taka-taka sounding as she looks on in surprise. The knights begin a rhythmic shout. Isabella is tossed into the air. A medal honors her extraordinary bravery. The Emperor officially awards her. Isabella proudly recounts her royal award. A rhythmic clap sounding fills the air. Callaghan and Yuta join the applause. The girl stands dazed and decorated. A woman reads the newspaper happily. Gilbert reads about the factory opening. A boy ponders the news's impact. A photo captures the historic moment. A festive cheers sounding rings out. A triumphant yeah sounding echoes throughout. Distant yeah sounding cheers color. She remembers her former lonely death. Her new family brings her joy. Fear of the past still lingers. She vows to stand her ground. Callaghan stands proudly with the boy. A quiet evening blankets the mansion. A heavy thwomp-sounding Markson. A sudden presence startles the girl. Callaghan calls the blonde girl's name, prompting her to address him as her grace, but the black-haired man notes that while he knows she must be tired, he needs to talk for a moment.
Silence fills the dimly lit room.
Amidst the quiet, the blonde girl wonders internally why the man isn't saying anything.
Her internal anxiety begins to spike. Callaghan prepares to ask the question. The black-haired man prefaces his remark by calling it a rather odd question, causing the blonde girl to react in confusion and ask what he means. Callaghan looks down and mentions that at first he felt a certain way.
Shock washes over the young girl.
The black-haired man reflects that at times the blonde girl seemed to know things as if she had already lived through them.
Dread fills her wide-eyed expression.
Pointing toward a jar of essence, the black-haired man points out that she knew about the dark trace despite having never met a dark magician before. The man notes that her insight and intelligence are way beyond her age, concluding that it is almost peculiar. Looking directly at her, the black-haired man asks the blonde girl who she just is. She feels exposed and utterly vulnerable. Feeling a sudden chill sounding, the blonde girl realizes he is rightfully suspicious and has likely remained quiet out of consideration for her. With a tight clench sounding of her dress, the blonde girl worries that Callaghan might believe her, but then realize everything she said to convince him was a lie. Dark roses bloom in the shadows. The blonde girl reflects that she didn't come to the house out of righteousness and wonders what will happen if he finds out she only wanted to avoid her enemies, before reminding herself she will divorce him anyway. The blonde girl worries that he will be deeply disappointed in her and might even tell her to leave. She mentally rejects the terrifying thought. Feeling a rhythmic shake sounding, the blonde girl reflects that it turns out she is still stuck in that dark room. Softening his tone, the black-haired man clarifies that he wasn't trying to press for an answer and tells her she can wait to tell him when she is ready.
The blonde girl addresses him as her Grace, but the man says that wasn't why he wanted to talk as he prepares to hand her a package.
Reaching out, the blonde girl asks in confusion what the bundle of letters is.
Callaghan tells her she will see and then speaks the name of Viola Schweier.
Recognition dawns on her tearful face.
The blonde girl clutches the precious letters tightly to her chest.
Callaghan explains that the bundle of old papers he is holding are letters Isabella's parents left behind for her.
The black-haired man notes that he discovered these items within a royal classified vault.
He specifies that the first item was a detailed investigative report regarding the void.
Looking toward the blonde girl, Callaghan clarifies that the second item consisted of personal letters addressed to her.
A close-up captures the intensity in the man's crimson eye as he speaks of her past.
A vision of the past shows a man with glasses and a brown-haired woman writing at a table, confirming they wrote the letters for her.
A lonely, slow drip sounding echoes over the stack of weathered envelopes. Placing a comforting hand on her head, the black-haired man admits he had planned to wait until she was older to give them to her.
Isabella holds the first page, which begins with a simple, affectionate greeting to her.
The text expresses deep regret for their sudden departure, shown alongside a memory of a younger Isabella reaching out in despair.
Her mother offers a sincere apology for the hardships she has had to endure, as her parents are seen standing by a carriage in the distance.
The letters explain that exploring the void was necessary to find a way to help those suffering from the dark fog.
Her parents share a somber, pained glance as they prepare for their mission.
A final plea for forgiveness is written on the page.
The flashback reveals a small, weeping Isabella being comforted by the household staff as her parents leave.
In the present, the blonde girl is overcome with emotion, letting out a soft, heavy sniffle sounding while clutching the papers.
The morning sun rises outside as a small bird lets out a cheerful chirp sounding from its perch.
A maid enters the bedroom with a pleasant greeting for the young lady.
The woman's face instantly contorts into an expression of pure, wide-eyed shock.
A close-up shows Isabella's eyes are painfully swollen, prompting the maid to gasp in concern.
The maid awkwardly notes the sunny weather and offers to bring breakfast to the room, but Isabella declines while worrying about her reaction. Pulling the covers up, the blonde girl reflects that she is far too embarrassed to admit she spent the entire night crying.
A quick, rhythmic tat-tat-tat sounding of footsteps approaches from the hallway.
The girl executes a cautious peek sounding as she looks through the door. Catching sight of something pleasant, Isabella breaks into a radiant, joyful smile sounding. Her parents' letters now rest safely on a table surrounded by fresh red roses.
Faint, hushed whispers sounding voices from the servants filled the corridors as they addressed their lord.
Walking through the mansion, the blonde girl notes that she feels the weight of everyone's constant observation lately. She corrects her thought, realizing the staff is actually focusing their attention elsewhere. The servants are caught whispering and staring specifically at the black-haired boy. A maid approaches Yuta and asks if she can speak with him privately for a moment. A woman with pink hair leans in toward the boy, mentioning she wasn't entirely sure what his preferences would be. Isabella notices that even the teachers and other staff members are involved in the secrecy.
A large group of adults gathers around Yuta, bowing and presenting him with various offerings.
Watching from the shadows, the blonde girl begins to feel a growing sense of isolation. Gina, a woman with long dreadlocks, leans on her hand and asks if she feels like an outcast. Isabella claims she just feels a bit left out, but the brown-haired woman offers a skeptical response as she picks at her teeth. The girl lets out a frustrated, sharp humph sounding and tells her not to make fun of her. Gina laughs and tells her she will simply have to endure it for 10 more days, leaving the girl in a state of confusion. The brown-haired woman reveals that Yuta's birthday is coming up in 10 days, causing Isabella to freeze in absolute shock. Surprised by the girl's reaction, Gina remarks that the boy would have been heartbroken to know she was unaware. The woman continues to tease her, dramatically asking how she could have possibly forgotten such an important date. In a comedic vision, the boy is shown weeping over her betrayal, while Isabella lets out a loud cry of despair. Gina laughs heartily, admitting that teasing the girl is one of her favorite pastimes. The scene shifts to the warmth of the kitchen, where the smell of cooking food fills the air. Isabella asks why no one told her, and the headmaid suggests the Duke was likely too busy and simply forgot to mention it. Narrowing her eyes, the blonde girl thinks to herself that, regardless of the Duke, Yuta could have at least given her a hint. Sitting on the stairs, Isabella looks up and asks what there is to worry about. A memory shows the servants and the Duke preparing a variety of sincere gifts for the boy. Despite the effort, the narration notes that none of the grand presents ever seem to truly make the boy happy. The mansion staff is reportedly engaged in a quiet rivalry over who can provide the best gift for Yuta.
Isabella remains deep in thought while surrounded by large wooden barrels in a quiet corner of the estate.
The blonde girl mentally acknowledges the effort being made to spare her from any unnecessary trouble regarding the occasion.
Crouched behind a garden hedge, Isabella struggles to focus her thoughts with a frustrated, long ha sounding. She reflects on the fact that she actually possesses very little personal knowledge about the black-haired boy's preferences. After dismissing the idea of giving him meat or a common book, she continues her search for the perfect present. A soft, quick sk sounding follows the girl as she closes her eyes to concentrate. A red-haired girl with yellow bows suddenly appears upside down and playfully asks if anyone has a sweet tooth. Isabella reacts in total shock as Belle, the girl with pigtails, drops down from above to greet her. The red-haired girl offers a respectful inquiry to the lady while Isabella remains frozen from the surprise. Belle collapses in fits of laughter over the successful prank while the blonde girl responds with a defensive humph sounding. Isabella's eyes light up with excitement when the red-haired girl mentions she has a brilliant idea for the gift. The scene shifts to a vault overflowing with gold as the red-haired girl presents the treasure with a triumphant ta-da sounding. Isabella worries about taking such valuable items, but Belle explains they are meant to inspire her search for a gift. A fleeting memory shows Callahan entrusting the red-haired girl with the key to the vault long ago. The blonde girl considers the importance of refining one's judgment as she explores the various treasures. While Belle rummages through the piles of gold, Isabella carefully examines a small box she discovered. A soft, rhythmic tick sounding from her gloves draws attention as Isabella asks Belle about a specific necklace. Belle leans in with a look of intense curiosity, her amber eyes widening as she looks at the jewelry. The object is revealed to be the full moonstone, a large white gem set in a circular gold pendant. The red-haired girl lets out a quiet, thoughtful mumble sounding while staring at the radiant stone. A sudden realization strikes Isabella as she stares at the necklace with wide, shimmering eyes. A sharp whoosh-sounding energy fills the air as Isabella exclaims that the stone has reminded her of something critical.
Belle is visibly confused when the blonde girl picks that particular piece over the other more obvious treasures. Belle is visibly confused when the blonde girl picks that particular piece over the other more obvious treasures.
Surrounded by a vision of flowers, Isabella breaks into a joyful smile and declares that her decision is final. She confidently confirms her choice of the perfect gift for Yuta as two celestial orbs glow in the background. Isabella recalls a dark future where the boy fell terminally ill with a mysterious disease at the age of 16. She remembers how a simple touch once offered hope during that tragic period in the original timeline. In the past, the boy knelt before a woman in a white dress who had saved him from his suffering. The narration explains that the crescent moonstone given to him back then was responsible for restoring his health. She clearly remembers the brown-haired man, Hainer, being absolutely livid when he heard the news of the recovery. Holding the sister gem of the original stone, Isabella realizes she can use it to track down the other one. A lighthearted ding sounding rings out as Isabella freezes in place, prompting the red-haired girl to let out a curious who. Isabella stares into the distance, her mind racing as she connects the pieces of her plan. She begins to recall her first encounter with Jihee amidst a backdrop of elegant chandeliers and drifting music notes. The memory shifts to the grand hall on the day everyone gathered to celebrate the boy's miraculous recovery. Guests are seen dancing and enjoying the festivities, though the atmosphere feels hollow to her. A man in a green coat laughs while telling his companion to ignore his watching wife. Isabella is shown sitting alone on a couch, observing the shallow behavior of the nobility. The black-haired woman, Jihee, suddenly expresses her disgust for the man's behavior with a crude gesture, leaving Isabella stunned. The blonde girl warns her that such actions could lead to serious trouble, but the woman remains unfazed. Isabella reflects that her very first impression of the black-haired woman was how remarkably different she seemed. Jihee joins Isabella on the sofa with a casual flop sounding, barely waiting for permission to sit. When the black-haired woman notes her bluntness, Isabella immediately offers a frantic, nervous apology. Letting out a soft, melodic chuckle sounding, Jihee admits that the girl's assessment wasn't wrong at all. The woman explains that she was growing weary of the pretentiousness around them and finds the girl's honesty refreshing. Jihee leans in close with an intense expression, eager to share the details of her earlier encounters. Isabella breaks into a genuine, hearty laugh as the woman recounts how she nearly kicked a nobleman. The conversation takes a serious turn when the black-haired woman mentions her recent discovery of a mysterious gem. Jihee explains that the crescent moonstone is meant to block bad energy and reveals she found it using its sister gem, the full moonstone. The black-haired woman admits she didn't know about the connection initially and searched everywhere, referencing a proverb about the difficulty of seeing things close by. She continues the explanation using an image of a large candelabra to illustrate how people often miss what is right under their noses. Noting the time, the woman mentions she has another appointment and remarks that it was a pleasure meeting Isabella. As she stands to leave, Jihee suggests that Isabella should begin her search by looking more closely at her immediate surroundings. Returning to the present, the blonde girl suddenly cries out for Belle. Filled with a sharp foosh-sounding energy, Isabella urgently demands an oil lamp while realizing the true meaning of the woman's advice. Isabella and the red-haired girl kneel on the carpet, placing the necklace under the lamp's light to see if it works. With a quick sounding of the lamp being moved, Isabella holds it still while her heart races with a rhythmic thump. The red-haired girl is surprised as something expected finally begins to happen. Isabella is wide-eyed and amazed, noticing that the gemstone is starting to show something hidden. A close-up reveals the full moonstone glowing intensely as it reacts to the light from the lamp. The blonde girl gasps in total shock as a secret is revealed. Isabella asks Belle to lift the lamp higher, and the red-haired girl happily complies as the room fills with a bright, froid-sounding glow. Belle lets out a startled exclamation as she looks up and sees the incredible result of their experiment. A radiant, multicolored flash-sounding burst emanates from the gemstone.
The girls are delighted to discover that the gem is projecting a massive, detailed treasure map onto the floor.
The scene shifts to Yuta's birthday celebration within the grand spires of the mansion. Holding a new sword, the black-haired boy politely offers his thanks to his father for the gift. The Duke and servants look on with a sense of dejection, noting that the boy hasn't shown a single smile all day. Yuta's face instantly brightens with a joyful expression when he catches sight of Isabella. The blonde girl presents him with a modest gift box, mentioning it's humble compared to his many kindnesses. Isabella explains that the gem inside the box is intended to protect him from negative energy. The boy looks at the present with a blush, deeply moved that Isabella prepared something specifically for him. Yuta vows to always carry the gift with him, leaving the girl relieved and happy that he likes it. Surrounded by a vision of blooming roses, the boy beams with pure happiness while clutching the necklace. Isabella is overwhelmed by his joy, thinking to herself that his radiant smile is practically blinding. Isabella recalls the grueling mountain climb to find the gem and reflects on her decision to change the original timeline's healing process. In a high-spirited moment, Yuta enthusiastically promises to get an equally great gift for her birthday. Isabella avoids his gaze and nervously tries to explain a complicated detail about her own special day. Letting out a frustrated sounding, the blonde girl struggles with her internal embarrassment. The entire household is frozen in absolute shock after hearing that Isabella's true birthday is actually in just 2 days. The Duke notes that her official documents listed a different date, prompting a surprised response from the girl. Isabella explains that her parents were living in a very remote research area when she was born. A memory shows her parents celebrating her birth among blue roses. Her father tried to register the date correctly, but a misunderstanding occurred between him and a hard-of-hearing official. She clarifies that a combination of local dialects and poor hearing led to the birth date being incorrectly recorded. Isabella laughs nervously while Yuta, his father, and the head maid remain in a state of speechlessness. A dramatic crack-a-boom sounding highlights the group's horror at the realization of their massive oversight. The black-haired man finds the absurdity of the situation quite humorous. With a sudden charge-sounding command, the Duke orders the staff to scramble and prepare another party for the following day. In a playful moment, Isabella points out that she wasn't told about Yuta's birthday in advance either. The mansion staff frantically rushes around, moving boxes and organizing the last-minute celebration. Watching from a window, the blonde girl observes the chaos below with a pensive expression. A soft, tired, ha-sounding exhale comes from a nearby man. Isabella calls out to Magda, the head maid, to get her attention. The blonde girl gently holds the older woman's hands while they stand together in the room. Isabella looks downcast, reflecting on the weight of everyone's constant attention. Rhythmic tat-tat-tat sounding footsteps echo through the hallway as a maid frantically directs the busy staff. Looking toward the commotion, the girl lets out a curious inquiry as she observes the mansion's activity. Isabella asks if the faces of the workers are visible. Isabella asks if the workers look miserable while a maid walks happily. A maid smiles despite being quite busy.
Isabella looks through the window and asks Magda why. Magda lets out a soft, light-hearted hoo-hoo sounding while smiling warmly.
Magda asks if Isabella has noticed how much she has changed since her arrival. In a memory, Magda holds Isabella's hands and notes how tense she used to be. The maid continues, mentioning how Isabella now smiles and offers thanks for every meal. The blonde girl looks up at the older woman with wide eyes. A close-up shows Magda's gentle and kind expression. Magda reflects that the Duke is a righteous but stern man who kept the estate's mood dim. Isabella thinks to herself that she can easily imagine such a somber atmosphere. Magda explains that since Isabella joined the family, everyone has noticed the Duke becoming much gentler. A young Yuta runs through a garden while Magda credits Isabella for the positive changes. The maid expresses how truly grateful the entire household is for the girl. Isabella is visibly moved by the heartwarming realization. A sudden, sharp knock-knock sounding startles the girl, causing her to let out a surprised gasp. Duke Barmouth enters the room and simply announces his presence.
Stammering in shock, Isabella addresses him while the Duke asks why she is so surprised.
Recalling his previous entries with a loud bam sounding and a dramatic crock-a-boom realization, Isabella is told to stop making a stupid face. The Duke explains that since she is now 10, he will make sure to knock before entering. Letting out a nervous ahem sounding, the Duke clears his throat while looking away.
Magda whispers to the girl that the Duke has clearly changed and there's no need to feel bad.
A small, happy smile spreads across Isabella's face. Laughing joyfully, Isabella pulls both Magda and the Duke along with her. A transition screen counts down the single day remaining.
Belle cheers loudly while the staff presents a massive birthday cake to celebrate Isabella's 10th birthday.
Hearing a rhythmic thump sounding of footsteps, Isabella turns as Yuta calls out her name. Blushing slightly, Yuta presents a large bouquet of roses and wishes her a happy birthday.
Isabella is dazzled and overjoyed as Yuta hands her the natural history book she had wanted.
Letting out a joyful yes sounding, Isabella enthusiastically thanks Yuta for the perfect gift. The Duke steps forward to present his own gift to the girl. The gift is revealed to be a magnificent silver sword with Isabella's name engraved on the blade.
The Duke tells her to never forget her roots as she thanks him for the thoughtful weapon.
Magda scolds the Duke for giving a sword, while Yuta smugly claims his gift was the favorite.
Isabella is startled as someone gives her cheek a quick poke sounding.
Belle and the red-haired boy grin mischievously while holding the giant cake. Chaos erupts as Belle shouts that she is coming for someone during the party festivities.
The red-haired girl lunges forward with a quick flick sounding movement.
A sudden splat sounding rings out as a large piece of cake hits the Duke's face. Thick white frosting begins to drip sounding slowly down the Duke's stunned expression.
The room turns chilly sounding as everyone freezes in absolute horror at the sight.
One of the staff members lets out a sudden, suppressed pft sounding.
Isabella breaks the tension with a boisterous poo-ha-ha sounding of laughter at the Duke's messy face. The Duke thinks to himself that his simple birthday wish was unfortunately not granted. A man in a red uniform reflects that the Duke's peaceful wish didn't even last a week.
A tense energy fills the room as the two men face off over a strategy game board.
Tears begin to drip, sounding down Isabella's face as she despairs over her lack of simple happiness.
The fierce rivalry between the two men is visualized as a dragon and a tiger clashing.
A loud, echoing scream of shock rings out from within the mansion's spires.
Sitting across from the black-haired man, Isabella is surprised to hear he is moving the royal crown of Radgrund, which he confirms.
Duke Barmouth mentions the recent attack on the central bank and expresses sympathy for the loss suffered by the Hellbart family. As they plan to move the treasure for safety, Isabella wonders if any place could truly be more secure than the bank.
A majestic, white-walled imperial palace stands tall against the bright sky.
Startled by the news that the imperial palace will house the crown, Isabella is told the arrangement already has official approval.
Isabella breaks into a nervous sweat, questioning why the royal family would agree to such an unusual request.
She continues her internal debate, noting that guarding personal property isn't a standard duty for palace guards. Looking serious, the Duke shifts the conversation to the Constance Knights, catching Isabella's attention. A group of faceless knights is shown, originally formed for political strength, but now dealing with dark magic.
Isabella is shocked, pointing out that dark magic matters should fall under the Godfrey jurisdiction.
The Duke dismisses formal protocol, doubting that the pampered boys of the other order will be helpful.
Duke Barmouth rests his chin on his hand, his red eyes reflecting a cold, strategic calculation.
A strategic board displays the various factions, including the Constance and Godfrey orders, as the Duke admits his distrust.
Deep in thought, Isabella realizes that moving such a valuable item without a solid plan is incredibly risky.
The Duke focuses on Isabella's eye, asking for her input on the situation. The two sit in silence in the dim, ornate room, contemplating the gravity of the upcoming task. Tapping his fingers, the black-haired man explains that the Empress's direct order necessitates including the Constance order. The Duke warns that working with them will be a mess, suspecting that some knights are already spies for Herbert. Isabella turns away to think, desperately trying to find a solution to the complicated political puzzle. She recalls the knight's original loyalty, but fears that Herbert's infiltration has compromised the entire order. A row of faceless knights in blue and white uniforms stand ready for duty. Two shadowed, menacing figures with glowing eyes represent the hidden spies and dark magicians lurking in wait. An idea begins to form, and Isabella wonders if there might be a way to salvage the plan. The girl proposes limiting the other order's escort team to only 3 members, surprising the Duke. Isabella reasons that this fulfills the official orders while significantly reducing the risk of a betrayal. Confidently holding up 3 fingers, the girl explains that a smaller group makes it impossible for Herbert to hide a spy. Standing over the map, the Duke initially calls the plan too dangerous before listening to her alternative. Considering her logic, the black-haired man admits that her suggestion could solve the issues with the other order. Isabella's face brightens, though she is taken aback when she realizes she might have to deal with dark magicians. Chibi visions of a god and the Duke appear as Isabella playfully asks the black-haired man to handle the danger. With a cheerful laugh, the blonde girl urges the Duke to take down any dark magicians that might appear. The Duke remains silent, his stoic expression giving nothing away as he listens to her bold request. Arriving at the security headquarters, Isabella joins the Duke for interviews with potential escort members. The room is filled with a sudden dramatic sounding as a man in a red uniform shouts his refusal. With a sudden slam sounding of the table, Knight Captain Akeem furiously points out that Isabella is just a child. The captain argues that a symbolic meeting of the orders has no place for someone so young. Standing firm, the blonde girl reminds the captain that she is an officially knighted member of the Gottfried Order. Isabella demands respect, insisting the captain use her proper name while a determined energy sounding fills the air. Captain Akeem is left speechless by the girl's fierce defense and professional demeanor. A massive, booming laughter sounding erupts from the gray-haired knight. The captain breaks into a wide, joyous grin, finding the situation incredibly entertaining. Turning away with a chuckle, the man notes that the girl truly is Callahan's daughter-in-law. With a respectful bow, the captain apologizes for his rudeness and addresses her formally as Dame Isabella. Isabella is relieved, realizing the intimidating man is actually quite lenient and reasonable. The Duke offers his own apology as the captain continues to marvel at the girl's personality. A nervous, brown-haired knight named Lloyd Ender steps forward and introduces himself. Lloyd is overwhelmed by the intense pressure emanating from the 2 powerful men sitting before him. From above, the scene shows Lloyd standing small before the large desk of the stern interviewers. Noticing Isabella, the knight is confused by the sight of a child in the elite order's uniform. The Duke glares with a terrifying aura, letting out a sharp yelp sounding from the knight for his distraction. Knight Captain Akeem asks the brown-haired knight why he volunteered, prompting Lloyd Ender to admit he needs money due to his uncle's gambling debt. Letting out a nervous sigh sounding, the young knight looks dejected as the captain acknowledges his difficult situation. Akeem calls for the next candidate, and a blonde female knight with a high ponytail named Allison Arna steps into the room. Allison explains she applied to work with her idols, looking toward the seated Duke and Akeem with a mix of awe and curiosity. Akeem finds it hard to believe any of the candidates are spies since they all seem so pleasant, but Duke Barmouth remains unconvinced. The Duke notes it is far too early to make a judgment as the sounds of the next candidate's approach echo through the hall. Watching with a sharp, red-eyed gaze, the black-haired man notes that the 2 old colleagues are still bickering just like they used to. A silver-haired knight with a haughty expression enters, causing Isabella to recognize him immediately as Ike. Isabella is visibly shaken, her wide eyes reflecting a sudden and intense realization. From behind the new arrival, the perspective shows Ike standing defiantly before the 2 powerful men at the interview desk. Ike grits his teeth in a visible display of simmering anger and resentment. Isabella wonders if this silver-haired man is someone that Duke is already well acquainted with. The atmosphere in the room becomes incredibly heavy as the silent tension between the 2 men reaches a boiling point. Letting out a low, guttural grrr sounding, Ike stares down the Duke with an expression of pure malice. The Duke coldly reminds Ike that even a ceremonial meeting requires a level of respect toward a superior that he is currently failing to show. Addressing him formally as Sir Ike, the Duke questions if this unprofessional conduct is standard for members of the Constance Order. Overwhelmed by the escalating hostility, Isabella stares in shock, wondering what could have caused such deep-seated hatred. The black-haired Duke keeps his composure, meeting the younger knight's furious glare with a detached, clinical focus. Isabella is completely lost, realizing she has never even heard the name Ika mentioned within the estate before. Letting out a sudden gasp sounding, Isabella is stunned when the man in the red uniform whispers that Ika is the nephew of the former Duchess. A nostalgic vision shows a younger Callahan on his wedding day with a beautiful purple-haired woman named Elisa Manfred. Elisa looks radiant and full of joy, holding a bouquet of flowers in a memory of a much happier time for the family. Isabella is momentarily frozen, her mind racing as she tries to process this hidden chapter of the Duke's past.
She realizes with a start that Sir Ike is blood-related to the Duke's late wife, making the current confrontation even more tragic.
Ike demands the Duke seek his father's forgiveness, a request that leaves Isabella deeply confused about the true nature of their feud. Resting his head on his hand, the Duke looks unimpressed by the knight's emotional outburst.
Ike insists he has nothing to apologize for, blaming the Duke's father for everything, which Callahan dismisses as a tired and repetitive argument.
Looming over the desk, Ike shouts that the Duke never showed any genuine concern for the fate of his Aunt Elisa.
A somber flashback reveals the purple-haired Elisa collapsed and motionless on an ornate bed, surrounded by a haunting silence. The Duke cuts him off with a sharp demand for silence, his voice low and dangerous.
His red eyes glowing with a terrifying intensity, the Duke warns that he will not tolerate personal grievances during an official military proceeding.
Dismissing the candidate entirely, the black-haired man declares Ike unworthy of further questioning and ends the interview on the spot.
A chilly energy fills the room as everyone stands in an awkward, stunned silence following the explosive argument.
Desperate to fix the mood, Isabella feels a strange sense of duty and decides she must be the one to break the tension. Blushing furiously, Isabella suddenly shouts out a joke, asking the room what they would call an apple that loves to tell jokes.
The Duke leans over to tell the girl there is no need for her to leave, leaving her staring blankly in a moment of pure social mortification. Letting out a sharp tack sounding, the door shuts as the dazed girl stammers out a weak response to the Duke's command. Covering her face in shame, Isabella realizes her pun apple joke was a complete failure and wishes the floor would just swallow her up. Isabella thinks at least someone appreciated her effort when a sudden loud slam sounding of the desk rings out from Akeem's laughter. Deep in thought, the girl ponders the complicated web of relationships and why the Duke's past remains so guarded. She recalls hearing that Ika had a refined taste for fashion, often assisting the late Duchess with her various formal dresses. A soft romantic light surrounds a vision of the Duke, portraying him in a much gentler light than his current stern reality. Isabella finds it almost impossible to imagine her stoic father figure acting in such a romantic and tender way toward anyone. The man in the red uniform begins to explain the situation to the curious girl, but he hesitates and stops mid-sentence. Changing his mind, the man looks away and tells Isabella that it is actually all right and she shouldn't worry about it. He reflects that the Duke likely had his own personal reasons for keeping Isabella in the dark about his history with Elisa and Ika. Isabella offers a warm, understanding smile, causing the man to think about how incredibly thoughtful and kind the girl truly is. A massive, booming bwah sounding of laughter suddenly erupts from the office, startling the two people standing in the hallway.
Akeem wipes a tear of joy from his eye, telling the Duke he finally understands why the girl is held in such high esteem.
The captain urges Isabella to go after the Duke, warning that leaving him alone will only make him dwell on the painful memories.
Akeem lets out a sharp tack sounding of his hands hitting the table as he shouts his immense gratitude.
Smiling to himself, Akeem reflects that while he thought Callahan was just a doting father, he now sees there is much more to it. Looking at the figurines on the map, the girl explains there is something important to know, which Akeem asks for clarification on. Isabella clarifies that the Constance Order Knights will only be provided with partial details regarding the upcoming operation. A blonde knight stands ready. Continuing her explanation, the girl adds that as a third measure, each knight will be given a different rendezvous point. Looking skeptical, Knight Captain Akeem questions if these measures are truly enough to catch a spy in their midst. Smiling confidently, Isabella explains that the plan's success depends on the fact that they will be using 3 separate carriages. Isabella notes the carriages will block their view, making them assume the operation is normal, while creating a chance for a traitor to steal Radgrund. Akeem finds the idea reckless, but Isabella explains the knights won't know the full plan, including Radgrund's true location or the number of carriages.
Isabella says they will assume their carriage has it, leading a dark figure to realize that an attack identifies the assigned knight as the traitor.
Akeem considers the gross plan. Isabella reminds him that secrecy is key, prompting Akeem to promise he will not report or leak anything about the operation.
Akeem stares out the window.
A knowing smile touches his lips.
A messenger crow takes flight. The red-eyed crow flies high. A secret message is delivered. The letter reveals a plot.
Reading a letter, the mustache man says the crown will be transported by carriage in a week via the outskirts and Westgate. The mustache man snaps at his silver-haired companion to be quiet, while the robed youth warns him not to mess it up like last time. A mysterious voice suggests that they should take a good look at the youth's face. A sinister youth grins maliciously.